Welcome back to our channel. Today, we will explore a new case, the case of Rachel Nichol. On a sunny July morning, a young woman took her son for a walk in the city park. They planned to go out early, since the day was expected to be hot, while enjoying the summer morning. They strolled along a quiet path by the stream, when a stranger suddenly appeared in front of them. Rachel Nichol was born on November 23, 1968. In London, she was beautiful and artistic. With an early interest in fashion, at the age of 10, she announced that she wanted to become a model. With determination and her striking looks, she achieved her dream. By the age of 20, she was participating in London Fashion Week. But Rachel's success on the catwalk was short-lived. In 1989, she met a Spaniard named Andre Hanscom. This fateful encounter quickly developed into a passionate love affair. Shortly after, Rachel discovered she was pregnant, which made Rachel happy. But at the same time, she knew that she would have to put her modeling career on hold to focus on motherhood. At that time, Rachel began to change her life. In 1990, Alexander was born to young parents who were not married and were in no hurry to enter into a legal relationship. They lived together harmoniously, with Andre earning a good income that allowed Rachel to focus entirely on raising their child. The family settled in a comfortable apartment in southwest London, near Wimbledon Common, where they adopted a dog named Molly and enjoyed a peaceful family life. On the sunny and calm morning of July 15, 1992, the weather forecast predicted a hot day. Because of this, Rachel opted for an earlier walk than usual, around 9 a.m. Rachel took her 2-year-old son Alexander and their dog Molly out to enjoy the fresh air. Wimbledon Common, a vast green space, nearly 4 square kilometers in size, tends to get quite busy during the summer holidays, which is why Rachel preferred to go in the morning, it being a beautifully sunny day. Filled with flowers and lush greenery, Molly and Alexander was playing in the grass. Unfortunately, what started as a lovely summer outing with his mother and pet quickly turned into a traumatic experience. Alexander recalled that suddenly, a man jumped out of the bushes. With a sling thrown over his shoulder and a large black bag, the man pulled out a knife and approached them, pushing Alexander to the ground. Moments later, Rachel fell down beside the boy. The park gradually became crowded, but mother and son were not seen until about 10:30 a.m. A passerby noticed Alexander crying as he clung to Rachel, who was lying on the ground. "Mom, wake up! Why won't you wake up?" At this time, Rachel's clothes were dirty. Adding to the tragic scene, a paper receipt rested on her forehead, which Alexander had placed there the day before. His mother had told him about bandages, and he thought that with this plaster, his mother get better. The details of what happened shocked even seasoned detectives. By the stream, Rachel had been stabbed 49 times in the neck and body. Besides, she had also been abused. The attacker only harmed Rachel. Her son, Alexander, and their dog Molly were unharmed. It was hard to comprehend that such a horrific crime could occur in broad daylight in a busy area. Initially, the police suspected that the perpetrator knew Rachel and had planned the attack, but it soon became clear that this was not the case. Rachel typically visited the park at a different time. After examining the area, law enforcement officers could not identify any suspects. She lived a quiet life focused on motherhood. Previously, she had been a model, and although she hadn't walked the runway in about 3 years, her beauty still attracted attention from men. It's possible that Rachel had a secret admirer who felt spurned and sought revenge. Upon investigating the crime scene, the police discovered that the only evidence left by the perpetrator was his male reproductive cell. Experts managed to create a genetic profile of the suspect, but in the early 90s, the DNA database was nearly empty, and no matches were found. During their investigation, the police canvassed the park for witnesses, interviewing around 500 people who had been there on July 15 between 9 and 11 a.m., but only one person provided significant information. A witness reported seeing a man around 9:30 a.m. who was washing his hands in a stream and then wiping his jacket. This man was carrying a black bag over his shoulder and which stood out to Alexander based on this description. The police created a composite sketch of a young man with short brown hair, approximately 180 meters tall. Although the man's behavior was suspicious, there was no solid evidence linking him to the crime. The only actual witness to the tragedy was Alexander, who was only 2 years old at the time and unable to provide any helpful information to the police following the highly publicized murder in the park. Journalists became increasingly interested in Alexander. Even trying to interview him at the playground, Andre had a strong alibi. He was at work during the incident. After the tragedy, Andre chose to leave the country, taking his son to live in Spain. After several months of investigation, detectives began to narrow their focus. 32 men were questioned in connection with the murder. The investigation quickly focused on Colin Stagg, a man from Roehampton who was known to walk his dog on the common. However, Colin Stagg came back into focus for the police when they discovered he had previously been fined £200 for being found naked in a park, although there was no physical evidence connecting Colin to the Rachel case. The police concentrated their efforts on him. They even sought the expertise of renowned criminal psychologist Paul Britton to create a psychological profile of the potential killer. Britton's report suggested that the attacker likely chose the victim at random while hiding in the bushes near the path, implying that he might not have known her beforehand. The profile indicated that the attacker was probably between 20 and 35 years old, shy, and had difficulty interacting with people, especially women. It was suggested that he likely did not have a wife or girlfriend who could satisfy his unusual fantasies, leading to feelings of distress that may have driven him to commit crimes. When the police compared this psychological profile with Colin, they found several matching traits, such as a similar age and the fact that he was a loner who lived close to the park and walked his dog there twice a day. However, this information was merely circumstantial, and the police needed more concrete evidence to proceed with an arrest. To gather evidence, detectives brought Colin in for questioning. During their discussion, Colin admitted he had met Rachel in the park, noting he remembered her because he found her attractive. He also mentioned that he had never been in a serious relationship, which troubled him. However, the police did not have enough evidence to charge him, so they devised a plan to trap him. They created an operation called Edsel, with an undercover officer named Lizzie James at the center of it. Her goal was to build a relationship with Colin, making him lower his guard, and hopefully he confessed to the crime involving Rachel. To achieve this, Lizzie frequently consulted a criminal psychologist for advice on how to connect with Colin. She developed a relationship with him, going on dates, talking on the phone, and writing letters together. Lizzie told Colin that she liked the occult and unusual experiments. At one point, she directly asked Colin if he wanted to explore some of his fantasies. He responded affirmatively and shared disturbing from violent thoughts. Despite her repeated attempts to get him to talk about the crime in the park, he remained silent in a private conversation. She suggested she would be willing to sleep with him if he confessed to what he did to Rachel. Colin replied, "I'm really sorry, but I didn't do it. I didn't harm Rachel in any way." Despite his firm denial and the absence of solid evidence, Colin was arrested in 1993. The police had recordings of phone conversations in which Colin admitted to Lizzie that he enjoyed hurting others. Additionally, during discussions with Lizzie about the incident in the park, he described specific details about the creek where Rachel was murdered, which details that only the actual perpetrator would know. The trial commenced in September 1994. In response to the unfounded allegations, Colin went on a hunger strike, leading to significant weight loss and a visibly exhausted appearance during the proceedings. In court, Colin stated, "Most of what I shared with Lizzie is not true. I invented much of it because I liked her and didn't want to let down the only woman I thought cared about me. I'm not interested in violence, and I have never done anything remotely like that. I'm certainly not capable of what happened to Rachel. After listening to both the prosecution and the defense, the judge determined that the police had been overly reckless in trying to obtain a confession through inappropriate investigative methods. The judge concluded that Colin was not involved in the Rachel tragedy and ordered his immediate release in the courtroom every year. On the anniversary of the murders, Scotland Yard faces pressure to advance the investigation. In the late 1990s, the Rachel murder was reinvestigated as part of Operation Enigma, which was a nationwide multi-agency investigation into the unsolved murders of 207 women under new management. Detectives began to collect evidence and files related to the case starting in 2000. In 2006, officers located Robert Napa, who was 40 years old at the time and had serious diagnoses of paranoid schizophrenia and autism spectrum disorder. In November 1993, he was convicted of murdering a young woman named Samantha Bissett and her 4-year-old daughter, Jasmine. He had been held in a secure facility for over 10 years. Robert carefully observed Samantha's movements and poses. One night, he waited for the right moment and entered her home through the balcony door, which was usually left open. Ultimately, Robert positioned Samantha on the bed in a way that reflected how she often appeared during intimate moments with her partner when the officers examined the crime scenes. They frequently required breaks and assistance from a psychologist, as they had never faced such brutality before. This tragedy occurred 16 months after the attack on model Rachel. Robert was born in 1966 in London. His father was a driving instructor, and his mother worked as a nursing home assistant. The parents often fought, and these arguments took place in front of the children. Robert had 2 younger brothers and a sister. When Robert was 9, his father left the family for Australia, where he became a fireman. Robert struggled with his parents' divorce. He wrote letters to his father, but over time, their connection faded. The father remembered Robert as a sweet child and believed he would not engage in terrible actions in the future. At school, Robert rarely made friends. He was often isolated, secretive, and aspired to be an astronomer. Classmates described him as living in his own world. His mother noted that Robert frequently hid behind doors to eavesdrop on her conversations with relatives. Afterward, he would confront them, accusing them of making up stories about him. He often lied and fought with his brothers. Additionally, Robert liked to spy on his sister when she was in the shower or when she was just changing clothes in the room. Sometimes, he would throw her back in bed. His mother noticed that her son was behaving strangely and that he had problems with his mental health issues. When Robert turned 11, his mother sent him for a psychiatric examination. After his first therapy session, Robert came home smiling, and the psychiatrist said he thought Robert mentally unwell. He was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome and began receiving the appropriate treatment. A year later, at age 12, Robert was attacked while walking with 2 younger boys. A stranger approached and forced them into a disturbing situation, which was traumatic for the group. This incident occurred in a park close to Robert's home. Psychologists believe this was the turning point that led to Robert's troubling behavior. His teacher noted that, after the incident, Robert underwent a dramatic change. It was as if he had shut down emotionally. Becoming like a soulless robot, he stopped expressing emotions and responding. He simply sat at his desk, completed his work, and went home. During a literature lesson, the students listened to a recording of a Victorian-era short story about a murder. As they listened, Robert turned pale, began to shake, and sweat formed on his forehead. The teacher initially thought he was having a seizure, but soon everything passed. Sometime later, Robert stole money from his uncle. His mother went to the police and requested that her son be taken to the station, fingerprinted, and treated like a criminal. She hoped this would scare him into changing his ways, but it didn't work. People around him saw him as a nice, normal guy, but at home, he was completely different. Robert had average intelligence and disliked physical work. At 16, he dropped out of school, took courses in catering, and started working as a laborer. He frequently changed jobs and often went months without work, spending time alone in his room. When his mother remarried, Robert immediately disliked his stepfather and refused to speak to him. By the time he turned 18, his behavior had become so troubling that his mother told him he had to leave her house. After that, she did not see him for 5 years. They finally reunited when Robert was living in a rundown room in South London. He told his mother that, 2 months earlier, he had forced a girl into an intimate situation in the park. She was unsure if he was being serious or joking. She contacted a psychiatrist and reported the incident to the police. However, the officers investigated and found no record of anyone reporting an attack in the city park. Surprisingly, they did not even question Robert. They never met or spoke with him. Robert began showing signs of paranoid schizophrenia around the age of 20, which took over his mind. He believed he was a brilliant mathematician who had won a Nobel Prize, had immense power, a multi-million-dollar fortune, and could communicate through telepathy. Robert was convinced that he had not been touched. Robert's first known victim was a 31-year-old woman, a young mother sunbathing in her garden in 1989. After attacking her, he warned, "If you want advice, don't leave the back door open." Over the next 2 years, Robert established a clear pattern of crimes. He typically targeted secluded areas in the park. His victims were usually young, attractive women, often with blonde hair. Notably, Robert committed several attacks in the same locations where he himself had been assaulted at age 12 between 1989 and 1993. He is believed to have attacked at least 11 women. Robert was short, but in great physical shape. He often carried a knife and rope, though he didn't always use them, and kept a weapon at home. As he committed more attacks, he became increasingly cruel to his victims. After he murdered Samantha and Jasmine, he left a fingerprint at their home, which helped detectives identify the killer as Robert Napper, a storekeeper at the time. Robert was arrested a year later. In May 1994, he was convicted but not sent to prison. Instead, he was sent to a maximum security psychiatric hospital, Broadmoor. Detectives investigating Rachel's case had considered Robert a suspect for some time. On 18 December 2008, at the Old Bailey, Robert pleaded guilty to the manslaughter of Rachel Nickle on the grounds of diminished responsibility. Judge Griffith Williams said Robert would be detained indefinitely at Broadmoor because he was a very dangerous man. There was no prospect of his release. At one point, Andre considered returning to England, but ultimately chose to stay in Spain. Years later, Andre got married, so Alexander got a stepmother and 2 sisters, with the support of his father and family. Alexander successfully found his path in life. Alexander vividly remembers the unfortunate day in a London park. In order to cope with them, he became interested in meditation and eventually became a yoga trainer. He also wrote a book about his mother and his life. According to him, it helped him finally accept his memories and forgive Robert Napper. Colin Stagg, who was wrongfully accused of murdering Rachel, demanded compensation for moral damages and won the case, receiving as compensation £700 sterling. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Anna Walshe. Anna Walshe was born on April 18, 1983, in Belgrade, Serbia. She grew up in a cultured family alongside her younger sister. Anna attended the 5th Belgrade Gymnasium, where she distinguished herself as an outstanding student. She then pursued higher education at Belgrade Research University, the oldest and largest university in Serbia, focusing on foreign languages. She earned a master's degree in French language and literature. At 22, Anna graduated and decided to explore new opportunities in the United States with her family's full support. In 2005, she began her American journey and settled in the U.S. with the goal of advancing her education in hospitality management. She took on administrative positions at renowned hotels, including the Inn at Little Washington in Virginia, which is part of the prestigious Relais and Chateaux collection. Anna's friendly nature, approachability, and strong sense of responsibility helped her quickly rise in her career, earning the respect of her colleagues and managers. Anna was multilingual and skilled at resolving conflicts, which helped her easily connect with others. She was well liked by her colleagues and had a group of friends. Anna took every opportunity to shine in her career. She became a U.S. citizen while keeping her Serbian nationality, earned a high income, and invested in her own home and car. Her travels expanded her perspective, and she was promoted to senior manager. Known for her intelligence, beauty, slender figure, and bright smile, Anna attracted many admirers during her time at the Wheatley Hotel in Lenox, Massachusetts. There, she fell in love with Marcus O'Neill, the hotel's head chef, and they got married in 2009, with Anna adopting his last name. After got married with Marcus, Anna's life takes a turn when she meets Brian Walshe. Brian Walshe, born in July 1975 in Boston, Massachusetts, comes from a prominent and wealthy family. In his younger days, he would often borrow money from friends without paying them back. While in college, he would treat friends to meals at expensive restaurants, but would use various tricks to make sure they ended up paying for him. For years, Brian was estranged from his father, Dr. Thomas Walshe, and this distance continued until Thomas passed away in 2018. Their troubled relationship began when Brian deceitfully withdrew nearly $1 million from his father's personal account and vanished with the money. The father did not report his son to the police and even tried to convince him to return the stolen money. When Brian refused, Thomas cut off all communication with him. At the time of this serious theft, Brian's parents had been divorced for a long time, and his father had started a new family. Thomas decided to completely remove his eldest son from his life and his will. However, after Thomas passed away, Brian quickly asserted his claim and filed a lawsuit, alleging that the will was forged by Thomas' widow and younger children to deny him his rightful inheritance. Unfortunately, he could not provide any evidence to support his claims and did not receive any part of the estate. Many people who knew Brian described him as greedy, malicious, and very cruel. He often resorted to violence and struggled to control his emotions. He would get what he wanted using force, and when he was angry, he became a threat to others. Reports indicate that in the late 2000s, Brian received treatment at a psychiatric clinic to manage his anger, during which he was officially diagnosed with sociopathy. In 2014, a unique love story began when Anna met Brian, a hotel guest. At the time, Anna was married to Marcus O'Neill, who also worked at the hotel. Despite Anna's marriage, Brian was immediately attracted to her and began to pursue her with increasing intensity. Used to getting what he wanted and unwilling to accept rejection, he relentlessly sought Anna's attention. He eventually obtained her phone number and home address, where she lived with her husband, creating a troubling situation for all involved. In 2015, the O'Neill family had to involve the police due to Brian's relentless harassment, which occurred around the clock. He repeatedly pursued Anna, calling her at work, texting her personal phone, and insisting that she divorce her husband to be with him. The situation intensified when Brian threatened to harm Anna and her husband if she did not leave with him. The details that followed are unclear, particularly why Anna ultimately changed her mind. However, a year after, she surprisingly divorced her husband. A few months later, Brian became her second husband. The newlyweds moved into a luxurious home in Casson, Massachusetts, which is about 20 miles southeast of Boston, in a well-off neighborhood. They had 3 sons in quick succession, with the boys being born a couple of years apart. Anna chose not to take maternity leave and successfully balanced her job with being a mother, continuing to advance in her career. She became the regional general manager at Tishman Speyer, a real estate company, where she earned a high salary and became the primary breadwinner for the family. Since her job often required travel to Washington, D.C., she bought another home there in her name, where she stayed during business trips. During these trips, she relied on visiting nannies to help care for her children. What was Brian doing while his wife was busy expanding their family and advancing her career? Brian was unemployed. The $1 million he had once received from his father was running out, and everything his wife earned was carefully registered in her name. Brian was looking for easy ways to make money. Before marrying Anna, he had spent some time in South Korea, where he became friends with a wealthy people whose family owned an impressive art collection. After returning to the United States, Brian kept in touch with this friend, who unexpectedly asked for his help in selling several paintings by the famous artist Andy Warhol. Brian eagerly agreed but chose not only to sell the artworks for a commission, he wanted to profit from the transaction. He had a collection of abstract paintings by a renowned artist, titled Shadow. Brian assessed each painting and gathered the required documentation, including authenticity certificates. He then decided to create copies of both the paintings and the documentation. To do this, he contacted artists who could produce precise replicas of the paintings. Brian convinced the artists that he needed these copies as backups, since each original painting was valued at approximately $250,000. For several years, Brian successfully created and sold fake paintings as if they were originals to collectors from different countries. His scheme came to an end when one of his buyers, an art expert who specializes in Andy Warhol, quickly recognized forgery and took legal action against him. The FBI then launched an investigation, and in April 2021, he pleaded guilty to selling counterfeit art. As part of a deal negotiated by his lawyer, he was placed under house arrest instead of serving time in prison, on the condition that he return the money earned from the sale of the fake paintings to the buyers. Although Brian's movements were heavily restricted, he could leave his house twice a day to drop off and pick up his children from school. He also had 2.5 hours each morning to visit a limited number of approved places nearby, such as stores, pharmacies, and dry cleaners, to buy essential items. On December 31, 2022, the Walshe family was getting ready to celebrate New Year's Eve at home. Only Anna, Brian, and their 3 young sons were present. Because of their age, the boys went to bed early, leaving Anna and Brian at the dinner table. That day, Anna shared her last social media post, where she sent New Year's greetings and mentioned that the past year had been tough, but she and Brian were still together. Anna was supposed to fly to Washington, D.C. for work on January 3rd. However, when she didn't show up for work on January 4th and missed an important deal, her boss, Tishman Speyer, reported her missing to the police. Her phone had also been unreachable for several days. Brian also reported her missing, expressing concern that he had not been able to contact her for several days. According to Brian, he last saw Anna on January 1st. He claimed that she had woken him up early in the morning, saying there were some issues at work and that her boss had asked her to come in earlier than planned. He then believed that his wife had gone to the airport with only a few belongings. However, inconsistencies in the case soon emerged. First, Anna had not purchased, changed, or booked a flight on January 1st, nor had she canceled a flight scheduled for January 3rd. Second, she had not shown up at the airport on either January 1st or January 3rd. Third, how had she left the house? Her personal car was still in the garage, and she had not called a taxi. Brian suggested that she may have hitchhiked, but this theory was not convincing. Brian's statements and behavior raised many questions. His accounts were inconsistent, and he did not seem particularly interested in what was going on. Unable to contact Anna for more than 3 days, he only reported her missing on the 4th day, and only after her workplace called. Brian was considered the prime suspect from the start. However, law enforcement did not have sufficient grounds to arrest him or obtain a search warrant for his family home. They conducted only a cursory search with his permission, but nothing came of it. Brian maintained that he had lived a normal life during those 3 days, visiting shops regularly and doing housework. However, verifying his claims proved difficult. Each time he left the house, he forgot his phone, which he said was often taken away by his older children to play games without permission. On January 5th, police issued a public appeal on television, showing a photo of Anna and asking anyone with information about her whereabouts or fate to contact law enforcement immediately. However, no witnesses came forward. Anna was known to have called her mother and sister one last time on December 31st, making her husband the last person known to have seen her. Surveillance footage from the neighborhood provided no clues. Anna was not captured on any cameras on the morning of January 1st, as if she had never left the house. Her husband, on the other hand, was recorded leaving and returning multiple times, but his destination could not be determined. His claims of a trip to the grocery store were dismissed. His car was not seen in any footage of the route, nor was it spotted in the store. It wasn't until January 8 that Brian was arrested for perjury and taken to the police station for questioning while his home was finally searched. It was discovered that on January 1st, he had visited a hardware store in another area, not on the list of approved places he could visit while under house arrest. There, he spent nearly $500 on a large amount of cleaning supplies, plastic sheeting, duct tape, a mop with a bucket, and utility rags. He paid in cash, perhaps hoping his visit would go unnoticed. The initial search of the family home turned up nothing unusual or suspicious. Everything was in its place, and there were no signs of a struggle or traces of blood. However, when law enforcement descended into the basement, there was no doubt. It was the scene of a gruesome crime. Blood was everywhere, and hidden among the old furniture was a bloody knife and saw wrapped in towels. Brian had previously admitted that on January 3rd, he had visited his mother's house on the other side of town. He claimed that he had violated the terms of his house arrest because his mother needed help with housework due to her poor health. But after the grisly discoveries in the basement, police suspected that along the way, the man may have disposed of evidence or some of his deceased wife's body parts. All the trash cans in the area where he and his wife lived, as well as along the route to his mother's house, were checked. These searches were fruitful, and in one of them, a kitchen axe with traces of dried blood and several bloody towels similar to those found in basement were discovered. Forensic analysis confirmed that the blood on the towels, knives, axes, and saws in the basement was that of the missing Anna, clearing any remaining doubts about her death. The search history on a laptop and a tablet seized from his home shows disturbing intentions. In the weeks leading up to his wife's disappearance, Brian searched the internet for information about the best states for divorce based on property division. He also looked into whether he could claim ownership of a second home in Washington, D.C. that belonged solely to Anna. This raises suspicions about his motives. At around 4 a.m. on January 1st, the first search made on the tablet was, "How long does it take for a body to start decomposing?" This search was followed by nearly 20 additional queries related to body disposal, such as how to clean up blood, how to dismember a body, whether a body could be identified without teeth, how long DNA can last, and if someone could be charged with a crime if the body was never discovered. All of these searches were conducted on the tablet belonging to his young child, who is the offspring of the woman he brutally harmed. By January 3rd, Brian was already looking up how and when someone can inherit property from a missing person. He seemed confident he could avoid punishment and was preparing to claim the inheritance. On January 18th, he was formally charged with his wife's murder, even though her body had not been found. Prosecutors believe that on the night of January 1st, Brian either deliberately or accidentally killed his wife. They suspect he then dismembered her body in their basement and placed the parts in plastic bags, disposing of them in trash bins around the city over the next few days. The area surrounding the Brian residence and within a few kilometers was carefully searched for evidence. Nearby wastelands, forests, and bodies of water were also investigated, but no findings were made. The defendant pleaded not guilty and did not reveal what he did with the body. Furthermore, it was disclosed that Anna had been feeling unhappy recently and had contemplated divorcing her husband. She expressed this concern multiple times during phone calls with her mother and sister. The day before her disappearance, she called her mother, asking her to fly from Serbia for a few days. However, her mother did not take her daughter seriously and decided to postpone the visit. Brian Walshe's trial is currently ongoing, and he is being held at the Norfolk Correctional Facility, waiting for his next court date. Anna's mother has been monitoring the investigation from Serbia, as she has not traveled to the United States. The Serbian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has reached out to the consulate in New York, which is coordinating with the Norfolk District Attorney's Office to ensure that Anna's mother receives timely updates about the investigation in court hearings. The 3 sons of the Walshe family are currently in state custody. Brian's family members do not want to care for them, mainly due to Anna's mother's age and health issues. Additionally, Anna's sister, who lives in Canada, has also refused to take in her nephews. The only person willing to take the boys is Anna's close friend, Pamela Bond, who prefers to care for them herself rather than see them separated and placed in different foster homes. As the investigation progresses and Brian Walshe's trial continues, it highlights the need to be aware of our relationships and the serious harm that can result from betrayal and deceit. While we do not yet know the final outcome for Brian Walshe, including whether he will face punishment or if Anna's body will ever be discovered, we will always remember Anna as a kind and loving person. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Kristen Trickle. Kristen Trickle was born on August 14, 1993, in a small town in southeastern Nebraska. However, her early childhood was marked by turmoil. Her biological mother abandoned the family when Kristen was just 3 years old. Despite the challenges, Kristen's father, James, raised her on his own, providing for her every need. Unfortunately, James struggled with a severe and worsening illness. Tragically, he passed away when Kristen was 16 years old. As a result, Kristen was at risk of being sent to a shelter until she turned 18, as there were no other close relatives to care for her. Fortunately, Kristen's aunt and uncle, who lived in Kansas, stepped in to provide a loving home. Although they already had 3 children of their own, they were willing to take in their orphaned niece and give her a comfortable and happy life. Kristen met Colby, a talented young musician, at church. At 18, Colby was already skilled on the guitar and wrote his own songs. He was passionate about building a successful music career. As they spent more time together, Kristen and Colby's friendship blossomed into a romance. Colby's charming personality and musical talents captivated Kristen, and he often wrote songs for her. He was outgoing, friendly, and had a way of making people feel at ease. After graduating from high school, Colby's interests shifted towards the military. He enlisted in the U.S. Armed Forces at 18 and went on to serve for 3 years, establishing a solid military career during that time. Colby maintained a close relationship with Kristen, frequently calling and corresponding with her. At 21, he made a surprise decision to join the reserves, returned home, and proposed to Kristen, who happily accepted. They got married in April 2014. After their wedding, Colby and Kristen settled in Hays, Kansas, where Colby completed his college education and pursued a music career, albeit with limited success. He performed at local events and parties, playing cover versions of popular songs. They had 2 dogs, which they loved dearly, and many people considered their marriage to be happy. However, tragedy struck 5 years into their marriage. On Halloween Eve, October 31, 2019, at around 4 a.m., a distress call was made to emergency services. The caller, who identified himself as Colby Kristen, reported that his wife, Kristen, had shot herself in the head with a revolver that was kept in their home. When medical help and the police arrived at the scene, a young man opened the front door for the officers, but stayed outside himself. Inside, the team found Kristen, who appeared to be surprisingly calm despite the severity of the situation. When the officers entered the bedroom, they found a woman, Kristen, lying on the bed in a pool of her own blood. A large revolver was on her abdomen, and she had a visible gunshot wound on her chin. At first, it seemed like she had already died, but surprisingly, she moved her hand, and an officer detected a weak pulse and breathing. The officers moved Kristen to the adjacent room to position her on the floor for resuscitation attempts. Despite their efforts, Kristen had died by the time the ambulance arrived, and the medical team confirmed her death. Sergeant Brandon Hotman went outside to inform Colby, Kristen's husband, that she had passed away. Colby repeatedly asked if Hotman was sure, and when he was told the truth, he broke down in tears. However, his behavior and tears seemed insincere, given that just minutes earlier, he had been chatting casually with other patrolmen about video games. At first glance, the scene suggested that she had taken her own life, but experienced detectives quickly suspected that something was amiss. It was the eve of Halloween, and she had been preparing for the celebration, which made her apparent decision to end her life all the more puzzling. The detectives found handmade costume decorations on her vanity and themed treats in the kitchen, including lollipop bats and ghosts, gummy worms, and other sweets. This suggested that she had been looking forward to the holiday, which made her death even more unexpected. She was found nearly undressed, wearing only her underwear, which was unusual. Typically, women take care to present themselves in a way that they would want to be seen, even in death. Furthermore, the method of death, a gunshot to the head, was also uncharacteristic of a woman. This method is often avoided by women due to concerns about disfiguring themselves. Kristen's body was severely damaged. One of the most puzzling aspects of her death was the gun itself. The large revolver would have been difficult for Kristen to handle due to her small size and fragile nature. It would have been hard for her to hold the gun, let alone twist her arm to shoot herself in the chin. The position of the gun also raised questions for the officer, as it was lying on her stomach, pointing sideways. Kristen's husband later explained that after finding her, he too had considered taking his own life. He held the revolver to his temple but then changed his mind and called emergency services, hoping to save his wife. At the scene of the crime, detectives were surprised when the victim's phone, which was sitting on a nightstand, rang with an alarm. It turned out that she had set the alarm to remind herself of plans for the morning, but it seemed that she had changed her mind and taken her own life during the night. This unusual detail raised suspicions, and detectives thought that someone might have staged the scene to look like a suicide. As a result, the victim's husband, Colby, became the main suspect and was asked to come to the police station for questioning. He agreed to go willingly. When Colby arrived at the police station, he seemed upset but not overly distraught. He remained calm and confident as he explained what had happened the previous evening. According to Colby, his wife Kristen, a manager at Walmart who was expecting a promotion, had come home from work and they had played video games together. Then, he went to bed early because he wasn't feeling well. Kristen had gone to the kitchen to finish preparing holiday treats, leaving Colby to sleep. But in the middle of the night, a loud bang jolted Colby awake. The sudden noise left him dazed and disoriented, his ears ringing, and he couldn't see anything in the darkness. When he finally turned on the light, he was shocked to find his wife Kristen lying motionless beside him, her head bleeding severely. Strangely enough, if it's true as stated by Colby, he attempted to revive his wife, but soon realized it was hopeless. He then picked up a revolver, put it to his own head, but ultimately set it back down on her body. He called emergency services and went outside to wait for the police. This sequence of events raises several questions. For example, Why did he place the gun on her abdomen instead of disposing of it elsewhere? It's also unclear why he waited outside for the police and medics if he thought his wife might still be alive. In situations like this, people usually try to save the person's life or apply pressure to the wound to stop the bleeding. However, Colby did not attempt to help his wife again, claiming he was in shock. While a police officer was trying to provide first aid before the medics arrived, he did not show any interest in his wife's condition. Instead, he stood outside and casually chatted with a police officer about music and video games. When Colby learned of Kristen's death, he briefly teared up, but quickly composed himself. At the police station, he answered routine questions, including whether Kristen had life insurance, which he denied. However, he mentioned that he was eligible for minor payouts from his time in the armed forces. During the conversation, Colby began boasting about his military accomplishments, claiming to have worked in intelligence and participated in special operations worldwide. Despite sounding credible, Colby's claims were largely false. When asked why he thought Kristen might have taken her own life, he attributed it to her long history of depression, which stemmed from a traumatic childhood and adolescence. He cited her mother's betrayal, her father's death, and her forced relocation to live with an uncle and aunt she had never met before as contributing factors. Colby's words seemed convincing, but experienced investigators sensed he was lying and had possibly rehearsed his story. Despite their suspicions, they had no concrete evidence to charge him with a crime, so they had to release him. Kristen's family was shocked and devastated by her death. Her uncle, aunt, and siblings immediately traveled 500 miles to speak with the police and make funeral arrangements. They strongly believed that Kristen would never have taken her own life, citing her strong religious faith and regular church attendance. According to her family, Kristen was a happy and optimistic person who loved life and had big plans for the future. She had even been working on opening a shelter for homeless animals and had found a property she wanted to lease. Investigations confirmed that Kristen had been planning to rent a new property and was expecting a promotion at work, which she was proud of. She was also preparing for Halloween and had promised to visit her sister for her birthday in November. Her relatives stated that she had no history of depression or mental health issues and did not have any harmful habits. Her family also emphasized that Kristen would never abandon her dogs, which she loved dearly. They suspected that her husband, Colby, might have been involved in her disappearance. They described Colby as a controlling and cruel man who dictated whom Kristen could interact with and would become enraged if she didn't respond to his calls or messages immediately. He prohibited her from contacting her relatives, but she would secretly call them from her husband's home. Visits with her family were infrequent. During her last visit, she confided in them that she could no longer endure the mistreatment and had discussed it with her husband. She warned that if things didn't improve, they would have to separate. The autopsy of Kristen revealed a single bullet wound on her chin, which suggested that the shot was fired while she was on her back with the gun pressed to her head. While it was possible that she could have shot herself, it would have been very difficult to do so. There were no signs of struggle or resistance on her body. The detectives, however, were not convinced. Given Colby's history of controlling behavior, they suspected that he might have been violent towards Kristen in the past. They conducted a thorough examination of Kristen's body, looking for any signs of bruises, abrasions, or scratches that might indicate a history of abuse. Despite their efforts, no internal or external injuries were found, aside from the gunshot wound. The investigation then shifted its focus to Colby's personality, revealing that he was a habitual liar who frequently deceived others and even himself with convincing falsehoods. Colby's story didn't add up. Despite his claims of being in danger and having connections to intelligence, he had no history of being in high-risk situations or working with intelligence agencies. In fact, he had been dishonest with those around him about his music career and income. In reality, his wife Kristen was the primary breadwinner, working hard to support their family. Colby, on the other hand, only played occasional gigs during holidays and spent most of his time playing video games. He had talent, but lacked the persistence and patience to succeed, and his laziness held him back. The police investigation uncovered some information. A search of Colby and Kristen gadgets revealed a revealing look at their lives. Kristen's phone calendar was filled with appointments, from haircuts to meetings with a real estate agent. Meanwhile, Colby's messages showed that he had been flirting with another woman, even while at the police station. He had exchanged messages on a laptop in the living room, raising suspicions about his honesty. A recovered search history also revealed that Colby had been researching life insurance payouts in the event of death shortly before the tragedy. This discovery raised more questions about Colby's motives and potential involvement in the events that unfolded. An investigation revealed that Colby had lied about his financial situation. He had taken out 2 insurance policies on his wife, naming himself as the beneficiary in the event of her death. These policies included military spouse insurance and a standard life insurance policy, with payouts that were much higher than Colby had initially claimed. In fact, he had calculated exactly how much he would receive if his wife died. Despite the suspicious circumstances and Colby's inconsistent statements, the case ultimately hinged on the forensic expert's report. The report concluded that there were no signs of violence on the body, except for a single gunshot wound, suggesting that Kristen may have taken her own life. The case was eventually closed, and Colby received the insurance payouts, nearly $50,000 from the military spouse insurance and over $100,000 from the life insurance policy. On the same day the money was deposited into his account, Colby ordered a life-sized realistic doll from an online store, apparently for intimate purposes. Colby indulged in a lavish lifestyle, buying a new gaming console, an electric guitar, and expensive musical equipment. He spent the rest of the money on fancy clothes and frequent nights out at bars and restaurants, feeling carefree and convinced that he had gotten away with the crime since there was no evidence against him. For nearly 2 years, Colby lived a life of luxury, but in the summer of 2021, a new district prosecutor took office and reopened the investigation into Colby's wife's disappearance. Detectives had approached the prosecutor, convinced that Colby had murdered his wife. They presented evidence, including the restored browser history, Colby's unusual behavior, and his clear motive. After reviewing the case, the prosecutor authorized the reopening of the investigation. In July 2021, Colby was arrested and charged with first-degree premeditated homicide and intentionally misleading the investigation. During his arrest, he remained calm and immediately contacted his lawyers, who began working on his defense. Colby's defense team argued that his wife had suffered from chronic depression for many years and that her disappearance was inevitable. They also portrayed Colby as a loving and caring husband, a valorous serviceman, and a devout person, contradicting the detective's suspicions. The prosecution took a unique approach by hiring experienced specialists to create a psychological profile of the deceased and examine her emotional state leading up to the tragedy. This method, known as a psychological autopsy, involved analyzing data from Kristen's phone, social media posts, recent photos, and interviews with her relatives, friends, and colleagues. After months of gathering and analyzing information, the experts reached a clear conclusion: Kristen had no intention of ending her life, given her short-term and long-term plans. The trial and verdict in this complex case were delayed, starting in September 2023, nearly 4 years after the tragedy. Although the defendant had a clear motive, acted suspiciously, and lied during interrogations, the forensic expert's initial conclusion initially worked in his favor. The prosecution had obtained a new report that could potentially change the course of the case. When questioned about the insurance inquiries on his computer, Colby claimed that his wife had likely made them to find out the payout amount. However, the timing of the requests contradicted his statement, as his wife was at work at the time, confirmed by surveillance footage. Colby was also asked about a life-size doll he had purchased shortly after his wife's death, as well as other expensive items. He explained that he couldn't sleep alone and needed something to hold on to, and that he bought the console and guitar to take his mind off his grief. His mother backed up his claims, vigorously defending her son throughout the trial. The psychiatrist's crucial evaluation revealed that Kristen had not intentionally ended her own life. This detailed assessment was instrumental in determining the events surrounding her death. The autopsy report revealed an unusual aspect. The angle at which the bullet entered Kristen's chin was peculiar. The forensic analysis indicated that the bullet was fired from the left side of Kristen, contradicting her dominant right-handedness. This raises questions about whether someone standing on Kristen's left side pulled the trigger or if she shot herself with her left hand. The latter is less plausible considering Kristen was a right-handed individual. This vital evidence raises serious concerns about Colby's potential involvement in Kristen's death. After deliberating the case, the jury unanimously delivered a guilty verdict, finding Colby guilty of all charges. Consequently, Colby received a life imprisonment sentence, eligible for parole after a minimum of 50 years. Notably, Colby refused to accept his guilt, despite being given ample opportunity. Throughout his appeals process, all of his attempts to refute his sentence were ultimately unsuccessful. In the end, no modifications were ever made to Kristen's official cause of death report. Hello friends. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Ashley Renee Lions. Ashley Renee Lions was born on July 21, 1985, in Scott County. She was active in the FFA program at Scott County High School, graduating in 2003. Ashley's brother Chris shared her passion for repairing cars, but her true interest was her boyfriend Roger McBee. After they broke up, Ashley discovered she was pregnant with his child. On January 7, 2004, Ashley learned she was having a boy and was overjoyed. She told her mom and brother about her plans to meet Roger and his parents at a restaurant and stamping ground. Despite her mom's offer to lend her car, Ashley opted to drive herself, saying she wouldn't be gone long. As she departed, her mom remembered her final words, "I love you, Mom. I'll be back soon." That evening, Chris received a call from Roger, who couldn't meet with Ashley, and had tried calling her, but didn't get an answer. When Ashley didn't return home by 8 p.m. and didn't answer her mother's calls, Carol started to worry. She called Roger's mother and learned the meeting had been canceled, sparking a frantic search for Ashley. Chris and his father searched for her, eventually checking Scott County Park, one of Ashley's favorite places. Ashley often visited Scott County Park with her boyfriend Roger, and later she would feed the ducks there on her own. The park is about 10 miles from Stamping Ground. One day, Chris and his father were driving around the park when they saw a car that looked like Ashley's. As they got closer, they realized it was indeed her car, with the engine running and the lights on. When they approached the car, Chris saw that the driver's side window was down, and Ashley was sitting inside with her head down. She was wearing a seatbelt but was unresponsive. Chris opened the door, shook her, and hoped she was just sleeping. But when he looked at his hand, he saw blood. He immediately called 911. Sadly, by the time Chris called for help, Ashley had already passed away, and the doctors couldn't save her. The devastating news soon reached Ashley's mom, who was overwhelmed with grief. The investigators arrived at the crime scene, and since Ashley's death was a result of a crime, her body remained in the car until the evidence was collected. At the scene, investigators found the car's engine running, the heater and radio on, and the driver's side window rolled down. A quick examination revealed the cause of Ashley's death. 3 9mm shell casings lay on the ground beside the car, and Ashley had sustained gunshot wounds to the head and neck. Despite a thorough search, the police were unable to find the murder weapon in the park. The unusual circumstances of the shooting suggested that Ashley was familiar with her killer. The fact that the window was down on a chilly night was suspicious, and the position of Ashley's body indicated that she had not attempted to defend herself or escape. From these clues, investigators concluded that Ashley knew her killer. The crime scene revealed that Ashley's wallet and phone were still in the car, leading investigators to quickly rule out robbery as a motive. The car's interior held a poignant clue: scattered ultrasound pictures, which Ashley had likely been looking at in the final moments of her life. At 5 months pregnant, Ashley's murder also claimed the life of her unborn son, Landon. This heinous crime was unprecedented in Scott County, and the community demanded that the police find the perpetrator. Ashley's parents told investigators she planned to meet Roger, the father of her unborn child, on the day she died. Roger was distraught, overwhelmed by emotion, and couldn't imagine who could harm his ex-girlfriend and their child. Investigators brought him in for further questioning. Roger told investigators he canceled a restaurant meeting with Ashley due to other meetings. He called her twice, but she didn't answer, so he called her home and asked Chris to have her call him back. Roger's account matched Chris's previous statement about Ashley's plans. Carol defended Roger, calling him a nice guy who got along with her family and not believe he'd harm Ashley and Landon. As investigators searched for clues, Ashley's family sought answers. Carol found her daughter's diary detailing daily life. One name stood out: Dina Williams, a classmate from a poor background, often wearing the same clothes. Initially, Ashley and Dina were friends, but their friendship deteriorated due to Dina's jealousy. Dina envied Ashley's possessions and relationships, including her romance with Roger. Ashley documented their multiple fights in her diary. Carol discovered this information from Ashley's diary and became suspicious of Dina's involvement in Ashley's death. After Ashley and Roger broke up, Dina quickly started dating Roger, which raised Carol's suspicions. Furthermore, Ashley's pregnancy with Roger's child might have motivated Dina to eliminate her as a rival for Roger's attention. Carol handed over the diary to the investigators, believing it held crucial evidence. The investigators also found Ashley's descriptions of her tumultuous relationship with Dina to be revealing. As a result, Dina was brought in for questioning at the police station, where she denied any role in Ashley's death. Dina, who worked at a bank, told investigators that she had an alibi for the evening of the crime. She was at an office party. Although she openly expressed her dislike for Ashley, especially because of her pregnancy, the lack of sentiment towards Ashley's death wasn't enough to detain her, so she was let go. The ballistic examination results revealed that the shooter was likely around 5 feet 10 inches tall. Since Dina was only 5 feet 5 inches tall, it seemed unlikely that she was the perpetrator. However, her twin brother Thomas, who matched the estimated height, had previously inquired about inducing a miscarriage, according to rumors. Moreover, people claimed that Thomas would do anything his sister asked. The investigators questioned Thomas, but he denied any involvement, and without evidence, they had no choice but to release him. Investigators' search for clues continued as Ashley's family prepared for the funeral, grappling with the unimaginable pain of losing 2 loved ones. During the autopsy, the fetus was removed from Ashley's body. Ashley and Landon were laid to rest together, a heart-wrenching gesture. The fact that the perpetrator remained at large added to the family's devastation. Ashley's parents offered a $3,000 reward, later increased to $5,000, for any information that could help catch their daughter's killer. This led to a flood of calls from people who thought they might have helpful information. One call in particular stood out. A woman who lived near the park where Ashley was shot reported that she might have seen the perpetrator. She described seeing someone running out of the park, jumping over a fence, and then getting into a red Chevrolet pickup truck that was waiting with its engine running. The truck sped away soon after. This crucial eyewitness account suggested that there might be more than one person involved in Ashley's murder, and that investigators should be looking for at least 2 suspects. The discovery of the red pickup truck led everyone who knew Ashley to suspect Roger, since he owned a similar vehicle. The police promptly took Roger's truck into custody and conducted a thorough search, but unfortunately, they found no incriminating evidence inside. The investigators decided to re-interview Dina and her brother Thomas. They started by questioning Thomas, who initially denied any involvement. However, after learning that a witness had placed Roger's pickup truck at the crime scene, Thomas became more cooperative. When asked if he knew who killed Ashley, he quickly replied that it was Roger McBeath. Thomas eventually made a deal with the investigators, trading his cooperation for a lighter sentence. He confessed to providing the gun to Roger, who then used it to shoot Ashley. Thomas also revealed that Roger had disposed of the weapon in Elorn Creek. After an extensive 6-hour dive search, the police finally found the gun, which was later confirmed through ballistics testing to be the murder weapon. The investigators initially suspected Dina of being the shooter, but they soon ruled her out due to a discrepancy in height. However, during further questioning, Dina revealed that she was the getaway driver on the night of the crime. This led to the arrests of Roger McBeath, Dina Williams, and her twin brother Thomas. It was clear that Roger was motivated by his desire to avoid becoming a father. Ashley, on the other hand, was excited to become a mother and had the full support of her family. Roger devised a sinister plan to eliminate the problem. He lured Ashley to Scott County Park under the pretense of a meeting with his parents at a nearby restaurant. Dina drove him to the park, where he approached Ashley's car with a gun. As Ashley rolled down her window to show him ultrasound pictures, Roger shot her 3 times, killing her and their unborn child. He then fled the scene in the pickup truck, escaping with Dina's help. The perpetrators stopped and got rid of the gun by throwing it into the river. Roger McBeath denied any involvement. Thomas Dina, on the other hand, was sentenced to 7 years in prison for his role in the crime. As part of his plea deal, Dina admitted to accepting $11,000 from Roger to harm Ashley and cause her to have a miscarriage. Although the plan was never carried out, Dina agreed to give Roger the gun used in the murder, according to court records. In 2005, Dina Williams pleaded guilty as part of a plea deal. The prosecutors recommended that she serve a total of 20 years in prison, making her eligible for parole after serving 17 years of her sentence. Prosecutors planned to call witnesses who would testify that Dina wanted Ashley dead, conspired with Roger to poison her, and even offered $1,000 to cause a miscarriage. When these plans failed, they turned to more extreme measures. Dina claimed her public defender warned her she'd likely be found guilty. She was distressed, saying she pleaded guilty to something she didn't do. Dina admitted driving Roger to the park, but said she drove around the subdivision while they met and later returned to pick him up. During her drive, a woman heard 3 gunshots, but at the time, she didn't know what they were. Dina, who was involved in the events, stated that Roger had planned something without her knowledge. Later, he called Ashley on his phone, telling her he loved her and was sorry he missed meeting her at the park. The jury listened to a recording of this message during Roger's trial. According to Dina, when she left the park, Roger never mentioned that Ashley was dead. Dina also claimed that she didn't report the incident to the police because she was afraid of Roger, who she said was abusive towards her. Dina Williams said she was terrified of Roger, who threatened to kill her. She expressed regret and sympathy for the Ashley family. However, Roger's parents disputed her testimony, calling her a compulsive liar who acted impulsively. They accused Dina of being jealous of Ashley and taking a plea deal to avoid responsibility. Dina was sentenced to 20 years in prison, released on parole in 2021, and claimed she was young and influenced by Roger at the time of the crime, denying knowledge of his relationship with the victim. During her time in prison, Dina participated in various rehabilitation programs, including anger management, legal aid training, horticulture, and Braille transcription courses. Roger's initial murder conviction was overturned in 2009 by the Kentucky Supreme Court due to illegally obtained evidence. The court ruled that prosecutors had used evidence from an unauthorized jail informant who had engaged in casual conversations with Roger, hoping to elicit incriminating statements. The informant had exceeded his authorized role, leading to the conviction being overturned. Roger later pleaded guilty to being an accomplice to murder and tampering with evidence, and was sentenced to 42 years in prison, with the possibility of parole in 16 years. He also received a concurrent 5-year sentence for evidence tampering. At his 2023 parole hearing, Roger expressed remorse for his actions, stating that he didn't deserve parole and was truly sorry for what he had done. He wanted to apologize to the family of Ashley Lyons, the mother of his child, whom he had loved deeply. Although he acknowledged his daily regret, his parole eligibility was declined and the hearing was discontinued. Roger remains in prison. In memory of Ashley, an angel garden with ceramic angel statues has been created at Scott County Park, where she tragically died. After Ashley's death, Carol and her husband Burchard Lyons worked to pass a law that recognizes violence against a pregnant woman as 2 separate crimes, one against the woman herself and another against her unborn child. This law was passed at both the state and federal levels. Welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Nathan and Crystal Maddox. Nathan and Crystal Maddox grew up on neighboring streets, fell in love, and later got married when Crystal became pregnant. Despite initial disapproval from Crystal's parents, they eventually accepted the relationship and even let the young couple get married. After their wedding, Nathan and Crystal started a family, having a daughter named Madison. However, their life was far from perfect. Nathan had to work hard to support his family, often traveling to Montana for work. Despite the distance, he remained devoted to his family, regularly sending money and visiting whenever possible. But one day, Nathan returned home from Montana to find his house empty and a note from Crystal saying she was leaving him. She claimed she didn't know where he was or when he would return, which was a lie, as Nathan had been regularly updating her on his whereabouts. The worst part was that she took their daughter Madison with her and even went to the police station, falsely accusing Nathan of neglecting his child in order to gain full custody. Nathan tried to visit his daughter Madison, but her mother's family, the Westfalls, kept pushing him away, relieved to be rid of him. Years passed, and Nathan returned to his hometown to be close to Madison. He didn't give up trying to see her, but he knew he needed a lawyer to get official custody and legal visitation rights. During this time, Nathan met Crystal, an old friend from childhood. They had gone to school together, but their paths diverged when Crystal moved to the city to attend university. However, she got married and started a family instead of pursuing a career. After her divorce, Crystal returned to her hometown with her 4 children. Nathan was immediately drawn to Crystal's energy and optimism. They got married in 2013, and Nathan worked at a warehouse while Crystal started a clothing business and opened a children's boutique. The family was doing well, and they could finally afford a good lawyer to help Nathan get custody of Madison. Madison was thrilled with her father's new family, including Crystal and her siblings. This made Kristen's parents, Lita and Paula Westfall, very resentful and afraid of losing their granddaughter. In 2012, Kristen had applied for full custody of Madison, and the battle dragged on for 2 years. However, Crystal's presence in Nathan's life changed everything. With a stable family and a good job, Nathan was granted visitation rights, and he was ecstatic. In October 2013, the judge allowed supervised visits with Madison. On January 18, 2014, Nathan and Crystal attended a Sunday service at Mount Carmel Church, planning to take Madison for a walk afterwards. But as they left the church, 3 loud shots were heard. Nathan and Crystal were shot and killed, shocking the small town. The police investigation revealed that Nathan and Crystal were shot in the head with a .30 caliber rifle, and Nathan was also shot in the thigh with a 20-gauge shotgun, indicating that there were two shooters. The investigation continued, with interviews of witnesses, acquaintances, and relatives, including Kristen's family. The Westfall's behavior shocked investigators. Instead of grieving Nathan's death, they seemed to be hiding their joy. Paul Westfall even faked a seizure, claiming he was too shocked to believe the news. It was clear they were involved in the murder, but the motive remained unknown. Kristen was the first to be interviewed, and her demeanor was eerily calm, and that despite her long history with Nathan and their shared child. She provided strange details about him, only highlighting the negative aspects of their relationship. Kristen claimed she knew who killed him, mentioning that Nathan had been involved with dangerous motorcycle gangs in Montana. One gang member had even threatened to kill him at his mother's house. Although this story checked out, it turned out to be an empty threat due to a broken motorcycle. As an alibi, Kristen said she was at the grocery store with her father, Paul, on the day of the crime. Surveillance footage confirmed their presence at 10:57 a.m. Paul told the same story, but as a hunter with access to firearms, his hands were tested for gunpowder residue, which came back negative. However, his reaction to Nathan's death seemed suspicious, leaving a sliver of doubt about his sincerity. Further investigation revealed that Nathan was involved in a bitter custody battle with Kristen over their daughter. He was close to gaining custody, which the Westfall family strongly opposed. This desperate battle might have been a motive for the murder, but the police had no concrete evidence to arrest anyone. The family consisted of 4 people, and 2 of them were the shooters. Investigators were yet to figure out who pulled the trigger or if they had hired a killer. Focusing on the key player in the controversy, Madison Maddox, the police decided to act. They removed her from the home, citing safety concerns, and searched the house. The search yielded disturbing results. A gun was easily accessible, and illegal drugs were scattered around the house. In 2013, Kristen was arrested and charged with possessing a controlled substance. Despite this, she continued to live with her parents and daughter, defying court orders. In 2014, Child Protective Services discovered a used syringe with illegal substances and a gun on Kristen's nightstand, leading to Madison being taken into temporary custody. The authorities wanted to place Madison in foster care due to the presence of illegal substances and a gun in the Westfall home. However, there was no direct evidence linking the Westfalls to the Maddox murder, and cross-examinations did not produce the desired results. To pressure the Westfalls, the police focused on 18-year-old Cameron, the most vulnerable family member. They threatened him with life imprisonment for his family and the death penalty for the direct killers if he didn't cooperate. Fearing for his family, Cameron agreed to work with the investigation and revealed the details of the crime. The murder of the young couple, Maddox, was carefully planned by the Westfall family to eliminate Nathan from his role as father. This was due to a bitter custody dispute between Nathan and his ex-wife, Kristen, who had the support of her family. The Westfalls were determined to keep Madison from her father, and when the judge allowed Nathan multiple visitations, it became clear he could win the trial. Kristen and her family plotted a scheme to remove Nathan from Madison's life. They tried to find someone to kill him, but when that failed, Kristen and her father decided to do it themselves. On January 18th, the family attended church, and Kristen and Paul created an alibi by posing as customers at a distant store to get on CCTV cameras. Meanwhile, Lita Westfall, Kristen's mother, attended the church service with Madison and informed Paul of Nathan and Crystal's departure. She called 911 immediately after the murder. Cameron played a role in concealing the evidence, discarding the gun used in the murder near a remote church and at a lake. He later cooperated with authorities, revealing that Kristen came up with the idea and the family went along with it. The police arrested Kristen, her brother Cameron, and her parents, Paul and Letha Westfall, and charged them with organized crime. Kristen and Paul were the ones who pulled the trigger, while Cameron and Lita acted as willing accomplices. Although Lita was at the church during the incident, phone records showed she informed her daughter and husband of the couple's whereabouts. The trial was lengthy, with each member of the Westfall family tried separately. Paul Westfall was initially found mentally unfit, but was later deemed competent and faced the death penalty along with Lita. To avoid the death penalty, they agreed to a plea bargain with the DA's office. Paul Westfall took a plea bargain with the prosecution, pleading guilty to the charges and receiving a life sentence without parole. Lita Westfall, his wife, also took a plea bargain, pleading guilty to organized criminal activity. She will be eligible for parole in 2046 and is currently incarcerated at Mountain View Prison in Gatesville, Texas. Kristen Westfall, the daughter of Paul and Lita, pleaded not guilty to all charges against her, claiming her family was crazy and she was the only sane one. However, when her family members testified against her in court, she was unable to respond. The motive behind the murder of Nathan and Crystal Maddox was revealed to be custody of their 5-year-old daughter, Madison. Kristen did not want Nathan to have unrestricted access to Madison and wanted to control her father's communication with the child. The trial took over a week, and with overwhelming evidence against her, the jury found her guilty of capital murder in just 8 hours. She was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Cameron Westfall, the youngest member of the family, was charged with 2 counts of tampering with evidence. He pleaded guilty and received a deferred sentence, contingent upon him testifying against his family. He faced up to 10 years in prison on each charge. Although he claimed to have had no involvement in the actual shooting, phone records showed that his mother had texted her husband and daughter during the crime. Cameron is currently incarcerated at the Huntsville Correctional Facility in Texas and is expected to be released in 2025. The case was highly publicized and shook the community of Colmsnale, Texas, to its core. The Westfall family's brutal crime was committed outside Mount Carmel Baptist Church, where Nathan and Crystal Maddox were shot and killed in 2014. In 2016, a judge sentenced Cameron to 10 years in prison, and his mother received a life sentence the following year. Lloyd Paul was also sentenced to life in prison after pleading guilty to first-degree murder, which meant he could not appeal his sentence. Kristen Westfall, the mastermind behind the crime, received a life sentence without parole. The legal battle for custody of Madison Maddox, Kristen's daughter, continued even after the Westfall family was sentenced. Nathan Maddox's father, Jim, filed a petition to become the primary guardian of his granddaughter. It's worth noting that many people die in custody battles every year, and instead of making children happier, these battles often leave them with psychological problems. The Westfall family, who were devout churchgoers, were willing to kill to achieve their goals, hiding behind their concern for Madison. Nathan, Madison's father, was not a bad person and loved his daughter. However, his ex-wife Kristen was filled with hatred towards him, particularly because he had started a new family and found happiness with his new partner, Crystal. Kristen was able to manipulate her family against Nathan, leading to the tragic events that unfolded. The custody dispute started before Nathan and Crystal's relationship, and in the end, there is only one loser, Madison. Hopefully, when she grows up, she will not remember the selfishness of the adults who used her for their own gain, claiming to act out of love. If they truly loved her, they would have worked to build a normal relationship for her sake, rather than pursuing their own interests. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Alana Frick. Alana Christine Frick was born in September 1977 in Windsor, Ontario, Canada, to Croatian immigrants, George and Anafi. She was the younger of 2 daughters, and her birth was seen as a miracle by her parents, who had been told by doctors that they would not be able to conceive again after her older sister, Caroline. Alana was very close to her sister from an early age and was raised with strong values of hard work and education. Her parents worked tirelessly at a large car factory to provide for their daughters and instill in them a love of learning. Both sisters excelled in school, but Alana stood out for her determination and passion for learning, spending all her free time reading and pursuing extracurricular activities like dance, gymnastics, and track and field. During her summer breaks, Alana worked in cornfields to help her family and learned to budget wisely. She excelled in math and science, and by high school, she had set her sights on a career in medicine. She graduated as the top student and enrolled in a prestigious medical university without issue. It was during high school that Alana began dating Matthew Ryan, who was also studying medicine. Their romance lasted throughout their university days, but after graduation, Alana decided to continue her studies in Ottawa's university residency program, while Matthew settled for a job at a local hospital. Despite the distance, Alana and Matthew's relationship continued until nearly 2002, during which time they even planned to marry. However, they eventually decided to remain friends. By then, Alana was interning at one of the country's top clinics and was working towards earning a doctorate, while Matthew's career had stalled. In February 2003, Alana experienced love at first sight while working a night shift at the hospital. She walked into the staff room and noticed a new colleague, Mohammed Shamji, who instantly captured her attention. Mohammed was a year older than Alana and a resident in the neurosurgery department. Coming from an esteemed family of medical professionals, Mohammed was born and raised in Ottawa. His father, Farid Shamji, was a distinguished surgeon, and his mother, Edith, was a skilled psychiatrist. His older brother, Ali, was a seasoned medical biophysicist, and both brothers had graduated from Yale University. Mohammed later returned to Canada to earn his doctorate from the University of Western Ontario. Although Mohammed initially showed no interest in approaching Alana, she was drawn to him and attempted to catch his eye. Eventually, Mohammed asked his colleagues for her phone number, sent her a message, and their romance began to flourish. Alana thought Mohammed was shy and introverted because he rarely initiated conversations, felt uneasy on dates, and would suddenly change topics or become silent. However, it was later revealed that his distant behavior wasn't due to shyness, but rather a lack of interest, as he was already secretly dating another woman. When Alana found out about the other woman, she became determined to win Mohammed over and become his sole partner. Their relationship was tumultuous during the first year, with 3 breakups and reconnections, mainly due to Alana's persistence. Despite her parents' advice to leave Mohammed, Alana remained committed, believing she had found her true love. Alana showered Mohammed with gifts, surprises, and home-cooked meals, but he only occasionally reciprocated her efforts. Meanwhile, Mohammed seemed to simply accept her affections, reciprocating only infrequently, creating an unbalanced dynamic in their relationship. In the summer of 2004, Alana discovered she was unexpectedly pregnant, which caused anxiety for both her and her partner. Despite their surprise, Mohammed, who was raised in a traditional Muslim country, felt pressured to marry Alana before their child was born, following cultural customs. The couple had 2 wedding ceremonies in early September 2004, one that respected Mohammed's family's cultural traditions and another with friends at a trendy restaurant complex. Although they appeared happy and in love, their marriage marked the beginning of a difficult period that would ultimately end in tragedy. In January 2005, they moved into a spacious house in an upscale Ottawa neighborhood and welcomed their daughter, Yasmin Ina. However, the birth of their daughter did not improve their marriage. Mohammed prioritized his career and education, neglecting his wife and newborn daughter. Moreover, he openly expressed his disappointment at not having a son. After having her baby, Alana took maternity leave to care for her child and manage the household. However, this led to tension with her husband, who would come home from work and isolate himself in his office, hardly spending time with Alana and their daughter. As time passed, he grew increasingly anxious, irritable, and critical, often belittling Alana's appearance, refusing her cooking, and even calling her stupid and useless. Despite her struggles, Alana kept her family problems private, not even sharing them with close friends or her parents. However, one day, while talking to her mother on the phone, her husband came home in a bad mood and began insulting Alana, which her mother overheard. Her mother tried to defend her, but her son-in-law shifted the blame to Alana, claiming she was responsible for their failing marriage. Alana's mother advised her to file for divorce and leave the abusive relationship, but Alana refused, insisting that she loved her husband and could handle the situation herself. Alana remained silent about Muhammad's physical abuse because the verbal abuse had become routine for him. However, the situation escalated in the summer of 2005 when Muhammad, in a fit of rage, punched Alana in the face, breaking her nose. Alana, holding her baby, fled to friends and reported the domestic violence to the police. She also decided to divorce Muhammad and leave him for good. Surprisingly, Muhammad began pleading with Alana to return, promising to never hit her again, raise his voice, or engage in any form of abuse. He claimed he would change and make their family life perfect, controlling his emotions. While Muhammad appeared genuinely remorseful, his actions were motivated by self-interest. As a young neurosurgeon, he was about to enroll at Duke University to pursue his doctorate, and a criminal conviction would jeopardize his promising medical career. Muhammad's primary concern was his own future, but he managed to convince Alana to drop the charges and file for divorce. She even agreed to follow him to North Carolina, where he would continue his studies and earn a degree. After a period of turmoil, Muhammad and Alana's family life became more stable. Muhammad was accepted into a competitive biomed engineering program, a significant achievement. Alana, meanwhile, enrolled in a master's program at Duke University, where she received a scholarship to cover her tuition. As a result, the couple had more time for each other, and their relationship became more solid. They decided to have another child, and in August 2007, their daughter Fisa was born. Although Muhammad had hoped for a son, the family was generally happy. In the summer of 2009, the family returned to Canada, settling back into their Ottawa home. Alana quickly returned to work as a family doctor at a prestigious hospital, earning a good reputation. Muhammad juggled his work, studies, and university teaching responsibilities. Around the same time, social media was becoming popular, and the couple started a personal blog that presented an idealized image of their family life. Behind their perfect facade, Muhammad and Alana's relationship was troubled. He controlled every aspect of her life, dictating who she could see, what she wore, and even monitoring her online activities. He would openly criticize her appearance, style, and parenting, but Alana chose to remain silent and tolerant of his behavior. As time passed, Muhammad's aggression and yelling increased, always blaming Alana for their arguments and problems. In 2011, he was offered a prestigious fellowship in spinal surgery in Calgary, which he accepted. However, he moved without his family, leaving them behind in Ottawa, and they were forced to maintain a long-distance relationship for over a year. During a visit home, Muhammad left his laptop on, and Alana discovered a message on his social media from a woman, implying a romantic involvement. When Alana confronted him directly, he admitted to having an affair and didn't deny it. This revelation was a devastating blow to Alana, and she considered divorcing her husband again. Her family thought she wouldn't forgive him this time, but surprisingly, Alana gave her family another chance. Muhammad promised to end the affair and start fresh in Toronto, where he had received a prestigious job offer. Muhammad and Alana had a third child, Marius, in 2013, hoping to strengthen their family. However, Muhammad's behavior towards Alana didn't change, and he continued to focus on his medical career, becoming a respected neurosurgeon. Alana also advanced in her career, but tension between them grew. During a family ski vacation, Muhammad's abuse resumed, leaving Alana with a deep cut on her arm that required stitches. Initially, she claimed it was a skiing accident, but later confided in her friend that it was from an argument over another affair. Alana overheard a private phone call between her husband, Mohammed, and his mistress. When she confronted him about it, he physically abused her. A friend advised Alana to divorce Mohammed, but she refused. Her friend jokingly suggested that Alana have an affair to get revenge, and although they laughed, Alana might have considered it a viable option to get back at her cheating husband. The summer of 2016 was difficult. While their older kids were at camp, Alana's youngest child stayed with her parents. During this time, the couple's relationship deteriorated. In early September, they celebrated their 12th anniversary on social media, but just a week later, they discussed getting a divorce. Mohammed refused, stating he was content, while Alana felt desperate. She started an affair with a colleague who had shown interest in her. Alana found solace in this new relationship, enjoying the care, attention, and feeling loved again. She became so enthralled that she might have considered leaving her children behind to be with her lover. On November 25, 2016, a fierce argument erupted in the family when Alana told her husband Mohammed that divorce was inevitable. The next day, she consulted a divorce lawyer and then departed for a 3-day medical conference in another city. During her time away, Mohammed frantically sent her messages begging her to reconsider and salvage their marriage for the sake of their children. When Alana returned home on November 30th, she made a final phone call to her parents, attempting to reassure them that everything was okay despite her anxious tone. What her parents didn't know was that Alana had tried to contact the police that evening, but unfortunately, she misdialed the number, which would have devastating consequences. The following day, December 1st, Alana's mother Anna tried to reach her daughter, but couldn't get through, so she called her son-in-law Mohammed to find out what was going on. In a calm tone, Mohammed deceived Anna, telling her that Alana had abandoned him and their children in the middle of the night to be with another man. Alana's parents were suspicious of Mohammed's story, knowing their daughter would never abandon her children. They contacted a close friend of Alana's who lived nearby, asking her to keep an eye on the Mohammed home while they rushed to Toronto to file a missing persons report with the police. Alana's family was worried when her friend said her car was still in the driveway. When her parents arrived at her house, everything seemed normal, but Mohammed was upset, insisting that Alana was with her boyfriend and that the police had been called unnecessarily. He had already told the police this when they visited earlier. Later, on December 2nd, a man walking his dog near the river, about 24 miles from the Mohammed's home, found a new-looking large suitcase under a bridge. Despite initial hesitation, his curiosity led him to open it, and he was shocked to find the body of a blonde woman inside. He immediately contacted the police, who sent the suitcase and body to the medical examiner to identify the victim and determine the cause of death. Alana's body was easily identified due to a luggage tag on her suitcase from a recent conference trip. Her parents confirmed her identity. An autopsy revealed that she had suffered multiple abrasions and bruises, but the primary cause of death was mechanical asphyxiation and a broken neck. The body was found dressed in pajamas, with no shoes, and positioned in a way that suggested she was placed in the suitcase shortly after death. Mohammed, the suspect, was apprehended the same evening at a coffee shop where he was consulting with a lawyer, apparently preparing to flee the country. However, he was caught before he could escape. He was charged with first-degree murder, but the neurosurgeon denied any involvement in the crime. A disturbing aspect of the incident came to light. Their 12-year-old daughter, Yasmin, had unknowingly witnessed her mother's murder. According to Yasmin, she heard screams and noise coming from her parents' room and rushed in. She cracked open the door to see her father kneeling behind the bed, with her mother likely lying on the floor, out of her sight. Mohammed yelled at Yasmin, telling her to leave, shut the door, and go back to bed. The next morning, he told the girls that their mother had left. Despite her young age, Yasmin sensed that something terrible had happened, but she struggled to believe that her father could have killed her mother. To protect Yasmin from having to testify in court, Muhammad confessed to the crime and recounted the events of that fateful evening. Muhammad and his wife, Alana, got into an argument about her infidelity and desire for a divorce. The situation escalated quickly, and Muhammad physically attacked Alana, knocking a phone out of her hand as she tried to call the police. He struck her multiple times in the face, pinned her to the floor, and strangled her. Their daughter walked into the room but couldn't see what was happening because of the bed. When Muhammad realized Alana was no longer breathing, he tried to resuscitate her, but it was too late. He had broken her neck during the attack. He then put her body in a large suitcase, drove around for hours, and eventually threw the suitcase off a bridge into a river, hoping the current would carry it away. However, the suitcase got stuck against the bridge's foundation in the darkness. During Muhammad's trial in 2017, his father, Farid Shamji, caused an uproar by making disparaging comments about his deceased daughter-in-law. Shamji tried to justify his son's actions, claiming Alana had been unfaithful and provoked Muhammad. These comments led to an investigation, and Shamji's medical license was revoked in April 2019. Muhammad was convicted of second-degree murder and received a life sentence, but he will be eligible for parole in 14 years. Since he had already served time during the trial, he could be released as early as 2030. As part of his sentence, Muhammad is not allowed to contact his children or Alana's parents and must pay them a substantial amount of money in compensation. He has also been banned from practicing medicine or teaching again, having his medical license revoked permanently. Alana's parents are now taking care of the children who have been left without their parents. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Kelsey Turner. Kelsey Turner was born on March 5, 1993, in Norfolk, Virginia, to Samantha Ingram, a would-be model and dancer, and Christopher Ingram, a laborer. As the second child, she grew up with her older brother Colin. Shortly after her birth, the family moved to Jonesboro, Arkansas, where Kelsey spent most of her childhood. After her parents divorced a few years later, her father returned to Virginia and lost contact with his former wife and children. Kelsey developed into a stunning beauty with a perfect figure, ideal for modeling. She wasn't interested in school, preferring to attend parties, go on dates, and participate in events. Her dream was to become famous, feature on magazine covers, give interviews, and walk the red carpet. Although she lacked talent, her youth and good looks were her biggest assets. In high school, Kelsey began attending modeling castings with her mother Samantha's strong support. Samantha had once aspired to be a model herself and was enthusiastic about her daughter's endeavors. However, Kelsey only managed to secure a couple of shoots for clothing catalogs. At 18, Kelsey married Judy Turner when she was already pregnant. Shortly after, she gave birth to a daughter named Beverly. However, their marriage was brief and ended in divorce by the time she was 20. After abandoning her runway modeling career, Kelsey decided to pursue a career as a men's magazine model. She created a portfolio featuring provocative photos and submitted them to various publications, which quickly caught the attention of several men's magazines. Kelsey viewed this as the start of a promising career and her path to a glamorous, carefree lifestyle, which she had always aspired to. Over the next few years, she regularly received offers for photo shoots. She enthusiastically gave interviews, attended events, and attempted to establish valuable connections. Notable highlights of her career included one-off shoots for Playboy and Maxim, as well as a photo session and interview with 110 magazine. For these opportunities, she traveled to Los Angeles and Las Vegas. In an interview, Kelsey candidly described herself, stating that she was a blonde with a curvy figure and a slim waist, and asked what more one would need for happiness. She also shared that she enjoyed partying, spending time with friends, and living life to the fullest, believing that life is short and should be lived beautifully and joyfully. Kelsey was not overly concerned about her future, frequently changed partners, and quickly spent the money she earned or received from admirers. At 23, Kelsey had another child, a son named Josh, but the father refused to acknowledge him or marry her. As her modeling career declined, Kelsey turned to social media to build a following. She regularly posted provocative photos of herself in swimsuits, lingerie, and revealing outfits, which were heavily edited to make her look like a Barbie doll. She also shared pictures of herself at trendy boutiques, nightclubs, and popular entertainment venues, creating an illusion of a luxurious and carefree life. However, behind this facade, Kelsey, a single mother of 2 young children, was struggling to make ends meet. She didn't know how to manage her finances wisely and spent all her money as soon as she got it. In 2016, Kelsey faced a serious crisis after an incident involving her daughter, who was left traumatized and became withdrawn and mute, despite being physically unharmed. The incident led to therapy sessions with Dr. Thomas Burchard, a renowned child psychiatrist in Monterey, California, which ultimately contributed to a tragic event years later. Dr. Thomas Kirk Burchard was born in Boston, Massachusetts, on February 16, 1948, to a family of a prominent architect and engineer. His family later moved to Virginia, where his father taught at Harvard and the Architectural College at the Technological Institute. Thomas spent his childhood and youth in Virginia. Unlike his father, Thomas chose a career in medicine, specifically child psychology. After graduating from medical school and completing his thesis, Thomas worked as a pediatric psychiatry resident in several prestigious hospitals and lectured at colleges nationwide. Eventually, Dr. Burchard was employed at a public clinical hospital on the Monterey Peninsula in California, where he worked for over 40 years as a highly sought-after pediatric psychiatrist. Dr. Burchard was a highly respected doctor with a reputation for connecting with his young patients and taking on the toughest cases. He had a doctorate from the University of California, Berkeley, and an impressive academic record with over 300 scientific publications, cited nearly 40,000 times, giving him an H-index of 81. He was also known for his kindness, responsiveness, and generosity, particularly towards his young patients from low-income families. He even paid for hospital treatments for sick children and assisted single mothers. Dr. Burchard lived with a woman named D.Y., who was described as his assistant, housekeeper, lover, or fiancée. She was close to him and the first to notice changes in his behavior, which suggested early signs of dementia or Alzheimer's disease. As he approached his 70th birthday, Dr. Burchard became increasingly forgetful, absent-minded, and inattentive. To cope, he kept detailed diaries and notebooks to record everything, including names, dates, and events, to avoid confusion. He always carried a notebook with him containing sensitive information like banking details, account numbers, passwords, and card pins. Dr. Thomas Burchard's trusting nature led him to increase his financial support to those in need from hundreds to thousands of dollars. Kelsey Turner took advantage of Dr. Burchard's generosity. During her first visit with her daughter, she tearfully told the doctor that as a single mother of 2, she couldn't afford his expensive services. Feeling empathetic, Dr. Burchard offered to treat her child for free and even gave her $300 to help with her children's needs. Kelsey was surprised but soon realized that by sharing fabricated, tearful stories about her struggles, she could extract more money from the elderly doctor. At their next session, she concocted a performance, tearfully describing her younger son's illness and claiming she couldn't afford his expensive medication. This time, she specified a fake amount, and Dr. Burchard gave it to her in full. Kelsey's luck had changed, and from that point on, she frequently fabricated emotional stories to extract large sums of money from the trusting older man. Instead of using the money to support her children, she spent it on her own leisure activities, luxury clothing, and beauty treatments. Unwilling to return to her hometown in Virginia, Kelsey convinced Thomas to pay for her rental housing in California, claiming it would be easier to find a job and the climate was better for her children. It didn't take much persuasion for the doctor to agree, and he paid for the apartment. There were whispers that Kelsey and Thomas were romantically involved, and that this was the reason the respected doctor accommodated her every request. While these whispers may have held some truth, Kelsey maintained that Thomas had a paternal affection for her and her children, and was helping them selflessly. This was supported in court by Judy, although she added that Kelsey shamelessly took advantage of the doctor's kindness and his declining mental state due to dementia. Thomas paid for Kelsey's rental housing, bills, and gave her large sums of cash for necessities. He also rented a luxurious Mercedes-Benz convertible for her, rather than a practical family vehicle suitable for transporting children safely. As Kelsey's modeling career came to an end, her youth faded, and she stopped receiving offers for photo shoots. But instead of getting a job, she relied on her wealthy benefactor, Thomas, for financial support. Over nearly 3 years, Kelsey tried to break free from Thomas, blackmailing and threatening him. Despite this, he spent around $500,000 on her and her children. However, Kelsey wasted all the money on luxuries, including breast augmentation and liposuction, hoping to revive her modeling career. She prioritized partying over her children, neglecting them in the process. As a result, her ex-husband gained sole custody of their daughter through the court, stripping Kelsey of her parental rights. She was left with only her younger son, whose father had never shown interest in his child. Thomas was furious when he discovered what was happening, not because of the girl's ex-husband, but because of Kelsey's behavior. He realized she was a neglectful mother who didn't care for her children and spent all the money meant for them on her own desires, entertainment, and clothes. Dr. Burchard decided to have a serious talk with Kelsey, telling her he would no longer fund her extravagant and idle lifestyle. In response, Kelsey threatened to spread false rumors that the respected child psychiatrist had inappropriate, intimate interests in his young patients. Although this was a lie, any gossip on the matter could severely damage the doctor's reputation. Reluctantly, Burchard agreed to Kelsey's terms and continued to transfer money and pay her bills. In early 2019, Kelsey decided to move to Las Vegas with her son, intending to revive her modeling career. As usual, she expected Thomas, whom she continued to blackmail, to finance this venture. The doctor rented a house that Kelsey had chosen and transferred the amount of money she requested. After this, Kelsey disappeared for 2 months without giving any sign of her whereabouts. In late February 2019, Kelsey resurfaced because she was running out of money. She called Thomas, crying, and told him about her severe illness, inability to work, and struggle to provide for her son. However, when the doctor refused to help, Kelsey's tone changed abruptly, and she began threatening and blackmailing him again. It's crucial to highlight that Judy had been pushing Dr. Burchard for a while to report Kelsey to the authorities, exposing her blackmail and extortion attempts. Judy also recommended getting Child Protective Services involved, considering Kelsey's past, having already lost parental rights to her older daughter, and her inability to properly care for her young son. Anticipating a potential court case, Dr. Burchard took steps to ensure he had the backing of his colleagues, keeping them informed about the situation and securing their promises of support. To persuade Kelsey to leave Thomas alone, Judy previously tried talking to her directly, but Kelsey responded with threats of retaliation. This time, Dr. Burchard decided to travel to Las Vegas to verify Kelsey's claims, knowing what he would likely find. Judy attempted to discourage him from going, but the elderly man was resolute. She then advised him to bring her or one of his friends along, but Thomas insisted that this was a personal matter that he needed to resolve on his own. Dr. Burchard set out on his journey on March 1st, 2019. On the morning of March 7th, a group of tourists driving through Nevada took a detour from the main highway onto a dirt road leading to Lake Mead. They stumbled upon a solitary Mercedes-Benz convertible parked in the middle of the desert with its windows up and roof closed, but no one in sight. The tourists found this suspicious and decided to investigate. As they approached the vehicle, they noticed one of the windows was shattered. Upon peering inside, they discovered signs of a violent struggle, with bloodstains throughout the interior. The tourists promptly reported their disturbing discovery to the police. Law enforcement officers arrived at the scene around noon, greeted by an overwhelming stench of decay under the scorching sun. The source of the odor was quickly located when they opened the trunk of the car. Beneath a pile of items and rags, they found the lifeless body of an elderly man, next to whom lay a blood-stained baseball bat. It was later confirmed that the body belonged to Dr. Burchard, who had been missing for 5 days. Judy had reported his disappearance on March 2nd, when she couldn't reach him at their scheduled time, and she immediately feared the worst. She contacted the police, hoping against hope that he would be found alive. Tragically, that was not the case. The autopsy revealed a horrific series of injuries on the elderly man's body. He had sustained multiple abrasions, bruises, and superficial cuts. The examination also showed that he had suffered severe head injuries, likely inflicted by the baseball bat found beside him in the trunk. Part of his ear had been severed, and his hands bore numerous cuts, suggesting a desperate attempt to defend himself. Additionally, there were bruises on his face with a peculiar imprinted pattern. The most shocking discovery, however, was that the man had been placed in the trunk while still alive, where he slowly suffocated under the intense desert sun. As the police investigated the crime scene, they discovered that the car was rented in Kelsey Turner's name, making her the prime suspect. Judy provided the authorities with the address of the house where the blonde lived and where the deceased doctor had gone, as it was also rented in his name. However, when the police arrived, they found the house empty. Inside, they noticed scattered containers of cleaning agents and a strong smell of household chemicals, indicating a hasty attempt to erase any evidence of the crime. The house had been occupied by Turner, her 4-year-old son, her new boyfriend John Logan Kennison, and 2 neighbors, Diana Pina and Jeremy Eric. Since they had all fled, they became suspects, as it seemed unlikely that the petite blonde could have inflicted such severe injuries on the doctor or moved his body to the car trunk alone. The police managed to interview Jeremy, who recalled that he and his girlfriend had left the house while the doctor was still alive and unharmed. According to Jeremy, his girlfriend had drunk too much and flirted with the doctor, trying to get a few $100s, similar to Kelsey's tactics. This had enraged Kelsey, who accused the woman of trying to steal her boyfriend. The 2 women almost got into a fight, and Jeremy had to quickly take his girlfriend away from the house. He hadn't returned for several days and was unaware of the subsequent events. Police discovered that Dr. Burchard habitually carried a notebook containing bank account details and passwords, but frequently misplaced it. Following his murder, the notebook went missing, and substantial sums were withdrawn from 2 of his accounts on March 3rd. The authorities promptly blocked the accounts and cards, and on March 21st, Kelsey and her boyfriend J.N. were apprehended in Stockton, California, after a second attempt to withdraw funds. Prior to their arrest, the couple, accompanied by their child, had been evading detection by hiding in motels, constantly changing their location and paying in cash. They later expressed regret for not completely depleting Burchard's accounts initially, and subsequently planned to empty them and flee to Mexico with the money. However, by the time they made their second attempt, the authorities had already blocked the accounts, leading to their capture. According to Diana, after Jeremy and his girlfriend left, a heated argument broke out between Turner and Dr. Burchard. This was triggered by the doctor's refusal to give Turner another cent. In a fit of rage, Turner threatened to ruin Dr. Burchard's reputation by spreading false rumors about his behavior with his young patients. As the situation escalated and Turner became physically aggressive, Dr. Burchard locked himself in a room for safety. However, J.N. forced open the door and violently attacked the elderly doctor with a bat, causing a severe hematoma and a nosebleed. Diana intervened, begging everyone to calm down. Upon seeing Dr. Burchard's condition, she urged them to take him to the hospital, worried about the consequences of their actions. Before they left, Dr. Burchard promised Diana that he would report to the police that he was attacked and robbed by strangers. The four of them then drove to the garage, where Dr. Burchard was seated in the back of the car. Kelsey instructed Diana to return to the house and thoroughly clean up, making sure to remove all traces of blood. Diana started cleaning as told, but heard Dr. Burchard's cries from the garage. Rushing back, she saw Kelsey and Kennison brutally attacking him, trapping him in the car. It was clear they never meant to take him to the hospital, but planned to kill him with a bat and knife. Diana was forced back to cleaning, fearing for her life. Later, she heard the cars drive away, and only Johns returned with Kelsey. From the start, Diana chose to cooperate with the authorities by agreeing to a plea deal, which meant she would reveal everything she knew about the case. In return, she avoided being charged with being an accomplice and received a relatively light 3-year sentence for tampering with evidence. In contrast, her former lovers refused to take responsibility and instead blamed each other for the crime. However, it was easy to prove their guilt because they left behind significant evidence in the car, and phone records showed they were in the desert on the night of March 2nd, where the car with the body was abandoned. Kennison was convicted of second-degree homicide and received a 45-year prison sentence, with the possibility of parole after 18 years. The situation with Turner was more complicated. After her arrest, she announced that she was pregnant, which significantly delayed her trial. While in prison, she gave birth to a girl, and both the newborn and her son were placed in the care of social services because none of Turner's relatives were willing to take on the responsibility. In January 2023, following her lawyer's advice, Kelsey Turner admitted her guilt and was sentenced to 25 years in prison, with the possibility of parole no earlier than 10 years from the start of her sentence. She is currently serving her sentence at the Florence McClure Women's Correctional Center in Las Vegas. In conclusion, it is worth noting that ABC's documentary series 20th Century aired an episode in February 2023 titled A Model Murder, which detailed the heinous crime committed by Turner and her boyfriend against Dr. Burchard. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Athena Strand. Athena Strand was born on May 25, 2015, in Duncan, Oklahoma, a small American town. Following her parents' divorce, her father relocated to Texas, while Athena remained with her mother in Oklahoma. Despite the distance, her father maintained regular contact, visiting her frequently, and her mother also made sure Athena spent quality time with him, given their amicable relationship. Later, both her parents remarried, and Athena gained 2 younger sisters, with whom she shared a strong bond, always seeking to spend as much time with them as possible. Athena was a cheerful child, always exuding positivity, with a passion for outdoor play and exploration. In late 2022, at the age of 7, she temporarily relocated to live with her father in Texas until the New Year holidays, after which she would return to her mother in Oklahoma. During her time in Texas, Athena attended a local elementary school. Her father's rural home, surrounded by woods and fields, provided the perfect setting for her to bond with her dad and his new wife, Elizabeth, in the beauty of nature. On November 30th, Athena returned home from school around 4:15 p.m., just like any other day. With her father and grandfather out hunting, she was left alone with Elizabeth. But that evening, Athena's mood was off, leading to an argument with Elizabeth. Upset, Athena retreated to her room, while Elizabeth headed to the kitchen to prepare dinner. 20 minutes later, Elizabeth went to call Athena for dinner, but she was nowhere to be found. Elizabeth searched the entire house and yard, but there was no sign of the girl. She then called her husband's relatives who lived nearby, but they claimed they hadn't seen Athena. Elizabeth then called her husband, explaining the situation, and he immediately told her to contact the police and rushed home. At 6:40, Elizabeth dialed 911, and officers arrived within 14 minutes. She recounted the events and shared her theory that Athena might have run away due to their argument. However, the girl's relatives remained skeptical, given Athena's age of 7 and her history of never straying far from home, especially at night when she was afraid of the dark. Initially, the police viewed Elizabeth with skepticism, primarily due to the 40-minute delay in reporting her child missing after realizing she was gone. However, after listening to her detailed account of searching the entire house and contacting relatives, they concluded that she was likely telling the truth. The officers promptly launched a search of the surrounding area, undeterred by the darkness, and meticulously combed through the forests and fields within a several-kilometer radius of the house. They focused their search on the area around the house, thinking Athena might have wandered off and got lost in the darkness, based on their main theory. While they also looked into the possibility of her being abducted, they didn't find any evidence to support this, since there was no sign of forced entry. Elizabeth didn't report hearing any noises or screams, and the neighbors didn't see anything suspicious that evening. Athena's relatives and concerned townspeople assisted the police in their search efforts. As soon as Athena's mother heard about her daughter's disappearance, she rushed to the scene. The search continued until almost 5 a.m., but they failed to find any signs of Athena. The area around the house, especially during dark hours, was difficult to access, which complicated the search. At 7 a.m., the police resumed their search, this time with more officers. As news of Athena's disappearance spread throughout the county, hundreds of volunteers joined the effort. Some volunteers searched the area on horseback and ATVs, while the police used drones and helicopters equipped with thermal cameras. Despite their efforts, Athena remained missing by the end of the day. The police were increasingly concerned for her life, given the onset of winter and the 50 degrees Fahrenheit temperature in Texas, which would have been challenging for Athena, who was wearing light clothing. On the third day, the police broadened their search to a radius of miles around the house, suspecting a potential criminal element in Athena's disappearance. Despite initial doubts that she had wandered off, they grew more convinced that she hadn't left the house voluntarily. Over the next few days, they scoured the surrounding area in all directions, covering several miles, but found no trace of the girl, as it seemed unlikely she could have walked that far without encountering anyone. Investigators sought to identify those near Athena's house that evening, a challenge due to the secluded location. However, they soon got a break. A courier service had delivered a package that same evening. FedEx led them to the responsible organization and the specific van, which was equipped with cameras, providing key surveillance footage. After rewinding the footage to the time when the van arrived at the house, investigators uncovered disturbing evidence. The footage showed the driver, later identified as 31-year-old Tanner Horner, pulling a girl who looked like Athena into the vehicle. The police promptly apprehended Tanner at his address on suspicion of abduction and took him in for questioning. Tanner confessed to delivering a package to Athena's house that evening. He hit her with his van while backing up, but she was conscious and uninjured. Athena told him her name, and they conversed. Panicked, Tanner put her in his van, unsure what to do. When Athena said she'd tell her father, Tanner's anxiety grew, fearing legal consequences if she told adults about the accident. After that, Tanner's bizarre confession left the investigators perplexed. He claimed that, in his words, killing her seemed the only viable option. First, he attempted to break her neck, but it didn't work, so he resorted to strangling her. Then, he transported her body to a nearby river and discarded it in the water. The police were naturally skeptical of this account, but Tanner provided them with the exact location where he had left Athena's body. They immediately went to the site and indeed found her remains. The news of the young girl's brutal murder sent shockwaves throughout the country, leaving her relatives and thousands of others stunned. As the case garnered widespread media attention, The public was horrified by the sheer cruelty of the crime. After the body was found, Tanner was charged with abduction and murder. As detectives awaited the medical examiner's report, they delved deeper into the criminal's identity, seeking to understand his motives. Tanner's version of events seemed utterly far-fetched. He claimed to have lightly struck the girl with his van, causing no serious harm. Yet, he was allegedly so terrified that he immediately decided to kill her, fearing that hitting a child without causing harm might only lead to his job loss. His story appeared highly improbable. Tanner, engaged with a year-old child, worked as an Uber driver and musician, performing in Fort Worth cafes. His social media showed a normal life, with photos of his child and musical performances. With no prior legal issues, there was no indication he was capable of cruel violence. 2 months prior to Athena's tragic death, the delivery man had shared photos on social media, showcasing heartwarming moments spent with his son and grandparents. The wait for the medical examiner's report, which was anticipated to clarify the exact sequence of events, dragged on for several weeks. During this time, Athena's grief-stricken parents took legal action against FedEx and the contracting company, alleging that they had failed to implement adequate employee screening measures, hence allowing Horner to continue working and paving the way for such a heinous crime. A devastating twist in this tragic tale emerged. The package Horner had delivered on that fateful evening was, in fact, a Christmas gift for Athena, a Barbie doll she had long coveted, which her parents had ordered for her. As the medical examiner's findings were made public, even more questions surfaced in the case. According to the document, the victim's death occurred within an hour of her abduction, with her body showing injuries of varying severity. The cause of death was asphyxiation. Initially, detectives believed that the killer, Horner, had abducted the girl to sexually assault her after spotting her near the house. However, medical experts found no evidence to support this theory, which puzzled the police. The detectives didn't believe the killer's account of events, as it lacked a logical explanation. They speculated that the perpetrator's initial plan was to sexually assault the girl, but something went awry. One theory is that after arguing with her father's wife, the victim went outside and was in the yard when Horner arrived to deliver a package. Noticing the girl alone and isolated, he saw an opportunity to act on his depraved fantasies. Horner could have lured the girl into his van through deception or attacked her to put her in the vehicle without a struggle. What happened next is unclear, with two main theories emerging. It's possible that Horner had planned to abduct the girl and take her far away from the house to commit his intended crimes. However, she may have started screaming or tried to escape, fearing capture, which led him to kill her. Afterwards, he dumped her body in the river. According to an alternative scenario, Horner might have engaged in inappropriate behavior towards the victim without physically touching her. In this case, a medical examination would not have revealed any evidence of sexual assault. The detectives stumbled upon an unexpected clue suggesting a sexual motive behind the crime. What was unusual about Horner was that he had no prior criminal record, which is rare in most cases. Typically, people who are capable of murder start with less severe crimes. The detective spent weeks meticulously investigating Horner's past, speaking to his relatives, friends, and acquaintances to uncover any hints of potential involvement in other crimes. Eventually, they made a breakthrough. The police identified several individuals who alleged they were victimized by Horner during their childhood. To protect the investigation, the authorities did not release the victims' identities or disclose full details of the incidents. However, it is known that one of the victims accused Horner of assaulting her 9 years prior. Additionally, he was charged with 3 counts of sexual assault involving minors in 2013, although it is unclear whether these incidents involved one or multiple victims. One of Horner's victims had been publicly sharing her story for years, describing how he assaulted her when she was 16. She used social media to raise awareness about Horner's criminal nature, but despite this, He faced no consequences and was not considered a suspect. The victim stated that for years, nobody believed her allegations. However, after Horner killed Athena, these allegations gained significant attention, revealing Horner's true character and possible motives. Horner faces multiple trials, including Athena's murder. A disturbing TikTok video shows him watching a bug being killed with a spray, his face showing an unsettling pleasure. This hints at sadistic tendencies, making his account of Athena's murder even more suspicious. Horner claimed he killed Athena to avoid punishment for a lesser crime, but this excuse seems absurd given his sadistic nature. Authorities are seeking the death penalty, backed by video footage and Horner's own testimony. His guilt is clear, and additional evidence may be presented during the trial. In May 2020, amidst the warmth of spring, Grace Holland found herself engulfed in an inferno of despair. In a frantic and hysterical state, she clutched the cold steel of a gun, her reflection in the dim bathroom mirror mirroring the turmoil within her soul. The Holland family, paralyzed by fear, dared not reach out for help as the specter of Robert, Grace's husband, cast a long shadow over their tragedy. In June 2020, the nightmare intensified as Robert launched a brutal attack on Grace in the confines of their home. Ripping at her clothes and delivering vicious blows, he left behind a mosaic of bruises, silent testimony to his cruelty. Grace, trapped like a bird in a cage, yearned for escape, but found her efforts futile. Desperate, she documented the evidence of her suffering, capturing haunting images of her bruised body. In a moment of sheer desperation, she reached out to her mother, only to be met with Robert's chilling threats, dismissing her cries for help as madness. Each word uttered by Robert pierced through the heart of Grace's mother, a painful reminder of her daughter's torment. How much longer could Grace endure this living nightmare? How could she break free from the suffocating grip of this hellish existence? Grace's narrative transcends mere tragedy. It echoes the anguished plea of a soul trapped in despair, a desperate cry for aid amidst the engulfing darkness. Born on September 23, 1984, in the serene town of Creve, Missouri, Grace Holland was nurtured in the embrace of a loving and supportive family. Alongside her twin sister Laura and another sibling, she traversed the pathways of childhood, exploring, dreaming, and cherishing the bonds of kinship. Her education in a Catholic school instilled in her a sense of discipline, while her pursuit of a degree in criminal justice fueled her passion for upholding the principles of law and order. Grace's innate sense of purpose and responsibility guided her path, leading her to embrace a career dedicated to serving and safeguarding others. Following her graduation, Grace embarked on a journey marked by marriage and motherhood, the arrival of 4 children becoming the focal point of her existence. With boundless love and unwavering devotion, Grace embraced the role of motherhood, delighting in the opportunity to nurture and shape the lives of her offspring. Proudly sharing snapshots of her cherished children with all who crossed her path, she reveled in the joys of parenthood, cherishing each precious moment spent in their company. In 2015, Grace's life underwent a profound transformation when she crossed paths with Robert Deus, the esteemed head of the Maryland County Fire Department. His valiant profession and heroic demeanor immediately captured her attention, igniting a whirlwind of emotions between them. Grace was drawn to Robert's striking blend of bravery, intellect, and compassion, while he, in turn, was captivated by her beauty, intelligence, and unwavering kindness. Yet, behind Robert's impeccable facade lay the shadow of a tumultuous past. His brother David, a former St. Louis police officer, had been embroiled in a grave scandal in 1998, casting a pall over the family's reputation and irrevocably altering David's trajectory. Nearly 2 decades later, David's untimely demise left behind a trail of unanswered questions and concealed secrets, shrouding the family in further turmoil. Robert's narrative became intricately intertwined with the legacy of his brother David. David's influence as a respected law enforcement officer had not only shaped Robert's career, but also facilitated his ascent up the ranks of the profession. The echoes of David's past reverberated through Robert's present, underscoring the complexity of familial bonds and the enduring impact of past events on the trajectory of one's life. Alongside his duties in the fire department, Robert held the position of deputy president at Liberty Arts Works, a family-owned company specializing in crafting memorials for fallen military personnel, firefighters, and police officers. This endeavor, coupled with his active involvement in initiatives supporting first responder services through organizations like Backstoppers, significantly bolstered Robert's standing within professional circles. Although Robert had a child from his previous marriage, which didn't yield the desired happiness, he embarked on a new marital journey with Grace, a detective in the Maryland police force. This union not only enhanced his influence in law enforcement, but also symbolized a fresh start for both of them. With fervor, they set about building their shared future, investing in a new home that epitomized their unity. Yet, beneath the veneer of success, cracks began to emerge. Despite Robert's thriving career and seemingly idyllic personal life, the specter of his brother's past transgressions cast a shadow over his own reputation, raising doubts about his integrity. Moreover, undisclosed issues surfaced within his marriage to Grace, gradually unraveling the facade of their picture-perfect union. Laura, Grace's twin sister, offered insight into the tumultuous nature of their relationship, likening it to a roller coaster ride, marred by alternating bouts of tranquility and explosive arguments. According to Laura, Robert exerted undue control over Grace's life, dictating her actions and relationships, thereby straining their once promising bond. The dissolution of Grace's friendship, under Robert's influence, served as a poignant testament to the cracks forming in their relationship. Laura's revelation about Grace's severed friendship with her best friend, following a dinner attended by Robert, added another layer of mystery to the unraveling saga. The exact reason behind the breakup remained shrouded in ambiguity, deepening Grace's sense of isolation from her support network. According to Laura, Grace confided that Robert coerced her into resigning from her job and joining the family business. Despite the absence of official documentation regarding her employment, the family insisted that Robert compelled the company to provide financial support to Grace without formal records. This arrangement, fraught with opacity, exacerbated Grace's vulnerability. Amidst these tumultuous circumstances, Grace discovered she was pregnant with Robert's child. Rather than elation, this news intensified the strain on their relationship. Court records, presented by the Holland family during the trial, laid bare the stark contrast in their aspirations. While Grace expressed a desire to keep the child and salvage their relationship, Robert advocated for termination. Shockingly, court materials revealed Robert's offer to pay Grace $1,600 for an abortion, underscoring his eagerness to rid himself of paternal responsibilities. The summer of 2020 in Missouri bore witness to a tragedy that shook the community to its core: the untimely demise of 30-year-old Grace Holland. What began as a promising engagement with Robert Days Jr., the fire department chief, swiftly transformed into a harrowing loss, leaving an indelible scar on the hearts of her loved ones. The circumstances surrounding Grace's death, veiled in mystery, plunged her family and the St. Louis police into a realm of uncertainty. As official explanations remained elusive, skepticism flourished, fueled by the deafening silence from authorities. Grace's mother found herself unjustly under the weight of suspicion, fueling the family's resolve to unearth the truth. Initially, progress in the investigation languished, prompting the family to initiate legal action and unearth evidence independently. Grace Holland's case transcended state lines, capturing national attention as a pivotal moment demanding justice. On October 29, 2021, Laura Holland, Grace's sister, penned a poignant letter shared on the police department's Facebook page. In it, she recounted Grace's harrowing ordeal, haunted by the specter of Robert's erratic and aggressive conduct, as she desperately sought refuge from the Maryland Fire Department. On June 24, 2020, amidst the turmoil of their tumultuous relationship, Grace clandestinely recorded one of their heated arguments with her husband. This recording, later shared with Laura, served as damning evidence of their abusive dynamic. In the audio, Robert unleashed a torrent of insults at Grace, callously expressing his disdain for their union while hypocritically insisting on spending nights at their shared residence. He derided Grace, mocking her perceived idleness and contrasting it with his own toil. Despite Grace's feeble attempts to placate the raging tyrant and profess her love, her words only stoked Robert's fury. Ultimately, he abandoned her, leaving her to grapple with profound loneliness and soul-wrenching anguish. Then, on July 20th, a terse message from Robert pierced the silence. "I want you to leave me alone. I can't stand the thought of you sleeping in my house. I despise you." Yet, less than 24 hours later, on July 21st, a seemingly serene snapshot captured Grace and Robert lying together on the bed in their newly acquired home. Both wore smiles, with Grace seemingly striving to bury the strife of the previous night. Only 7 hours separated this moment of tranquil facade from an impending nightmare. In a cruel twist of fate, within that brief span, Grace Holland's delicate happiness would unravel into an irreversible tragedy. On July 23, 2020, a deceptive tranquility settled over Grace and Robert's tumultuous relationship. It was a deceptive calm before the storm, the ominous quiet before the thunder that would forever alter their lives. At 11:53 p.m., Robert Dios Jr., his voice trembling with anguish, dialed the emergency services. "My fiancée shot herself," he sobbed, his emotions uncontainable. In the ensuing moments, time seemed to slow to a crawl. The wail of ambulance sirens shattered the night's silence as medics rushed into the house. There, they found Grace, lifeless. The clock struck 5:23 a.m., a time forever etched in the protocol as the moment of her passing. Her death, instantaneous, resulted from a gunshot wound to the head. The revelations of Grace Holland's autopsy, unveiled on September 17, 2020, sent shockwaves through those seeking answers. The report painted a stark picture. Grace had indeed shot herself, the bullet's trajectory deviating from the norm, prompting experts to question the official narrative. Yet, the Holland family contended that the investigation was cursory at best. During a brief exchange with detectives at the crime scene, Robert relayed that Grace, grappling with depression exacerbated by the recent loss of their child to miscarriage, succumbed to despair. Initially, Robert's account seemed plausible, but doubts lingered, casting a shadow over the veracity of his testimony. In the living room, Robert was when Grace emerged from the bedroom, seeking a hug, before retreating back into the room. Then, a gunshot pierced the air. Rushing to investigate, Robert found Grace lying in the bedroom, a gun nearby and blood pooling beneath her head. This account was promptly relayed to the medical examiner at 7:25 a.m. However, the Holland family contested this narrative. They alleged that on that very day, Robert, accompanied by his legal counsel, appeared at the Kreve police station and offered a divergent version of events. In his new statement, Robert claimed that he and Grace were together in the bedroom. She briefly left and then returned to embrace him, mentioning she had to leave for work. As she leaned in to bid him goodbye, the fatal shot rang out. A press release dated January 31, 2024, delves into the enigmatic disappearance of the interview recording between Robert Dios and a detective from Kreve. Jeffrey Hartman, the city's police chief, acknowledged the existence of the video interview during the investigation. However, he lamented an error in the department's recording system, resulting in the deletion of the crucial footage. This unfortunate turn of events left a veil of uncertainty shrouding the Kreve Police Department's inquiry into Grace's untimely demise. On August 4, 2020, Detective Char Parker unveiled intriguing revelations. Parker, while tipping off Robert about the impending police visit for evidence collection, subtly suggested the necessity of emphasizing Grace's depression to shape a narrative that would point to an apparent outcome. Significantly, the police honed in on the contents of Robert's phone during their search. Ultimately, after thorough investigation, the detectives concluded that Grace had taken her own life, as per the forensic medical examination's testimony. However, the Holland family remained steadfast in their pursuit of justice. Convinced of Robert's culpability in Grace's demise, they were resolute in their determination to expose the truth. Opting for an alternative route, Grace's family made the decision to enlist the services of a private investigator for an impartial inquiry. They harbored profound reservations regarding the adequacy of the police investigation. Laura, Grace's grieving sister, vocalized her apprehensions regarding apparent irregularities in the investigation. In an online post, she meticulously outlined the evidence and facts that underpinned their belief that the investigation had veered off course. The Holland family voiced their profound disappointment with the police's handling of the case, alleging a glaring oversight in not considering Robert as a suspect, despite numerous indications pointing to his potential involvement. Moreover, they criticized the investigative team for failing to conduct essential tests, such as examining Grace and Robert's hands for gunpowder residue and analyzing Robert's clothing for further evidence. Adding to their frustration, the Holland family lamented the loss of several critical videos by the Crass Police Department, videos that could have illuminated Robert's role in the tragic incident. They expressed dissatisfaction with what they perceived as the Creve-C Police's bias against Robert, highlighting what they saw as a special treatment afforded to him. Notably, they pointed out Robert's lack of concern for Grace following her death, despite being in close proximity to her. Additionally, the family raised concerns about Robert's connections within the investigation circles, implying potential undue influence on the case's trajectory. They asserted that clear indicators of domestic violence had been disregarded, underscoring their frustration at the lack of response to their calls for a more comprehensive investigation. In 2023, the Holland family took their quest for justice to the courtroom, filing a lawsuit for death by negligence against Robert. They accused him of physical abuse and suggested that his actions either directly caused Grace's death or drove her to take her own life. However, Robert's lawyer staunchly defended his client's innocence, acknowledging certain circumstances but vehemently denying any involvement in Grace's tragic demise. He argued that the family's emotional turmoil might lead them to assign blame where there is none. In December 2023, Officer Hartman from the CVK Police Department sought assistance from the St. Louis County Police Department to reassess the case. The county police agreed, initiating a thorough examination of the details surrounding Grace's death. This renewed investigation gained momentum in January 2024 when police officers visited Robert Dow's residence to provide medical assistance to his new girlfriend, Dr. Sarah Sweeney. While initially classified as a sudden death, the incident remains under investigation, with detectives awaiting the results of a toxicological examination, which could take 4 to 6 weeks to complete. Dr. Sweeney revealed that she battled severe illnesses, including bone disease and allergies, leading to hospitalization in 2021. These conditions posed a risk of fatal anaphylactic shock without immediate treatment. However, Dr. Sweeney always carried an adrenaline shot for emergencies and diligently managed her health, as per her mother. The family opted to await the official autopsy findings before forming any conclusions. In the eyes of the law, Robert Deus remains a suspect, despite the absence of charges in the deaths of Holland and Sweeney. However, the official results of Dr. Sweeney's autopsy could significantly impact the investigation into Grace Holland's case. Following a meticulous reevaluation, the St. Louis County Police discarded the hypothesis that Grace took her own life. The investigation findings were forwarded to the prosecutor's office in early December via the Public Information Department, which subsequently notified Fox News. Presently, the case is classified as death by negligence, though it remains open for potential further action by the prosecutor's office. Chief Jeffrey Hartman of the Creve Court Police affirmed their adherence to the initial conclusion despite lingering doubts and public scrutiny. Nevertheless, the Holland and Sweeney families persist in their quest for closure, eagerly awaiting the autopsy and toxicology results. They are determined to unravel the enigma surrounding Grace Holland's demise, pondering whether it was merely an unfortunate accident or if there lurks something more sinister and obscure beneath the surface of this narrative. Despite their efforts to infuse the holiday spirit into their home with decorations, gingerbread baking, and caroling, Kia couldn't shake off the sadness in her eyes. She held on to hope, awaiting Santa's arrival, yet deep down, she knew the greatest gift would never return. On what should have been Nadine's 32nd birthday, Phoebe, her sister, honored her memory with a heartfelt video tribute, concluding with Kia singing a song dedicated to their beloved mother. For Claire, life without Nadine was an endless cycle of torment, haunted by nightmares and memories. Daniel's name was taboo in their household, and David shared in their despair. Despite Christmas passing, grief shrouded them, unable to fill the void left by Nadine's absence. On January 14, 2020, Daniel faced court proceedings via video call, his lawyer requesting a psychiatric evaluation, approved by Judge David Kennedy. Daniel confessed to the murder, blaming intoxication from substances consumed that fateful night. The trial, overseen by Judge Michael Magram and a jury of 7 men and 5 women, was marked by prosecutor John O'Kelly's presentation of damning evidence, detailing Daniel's cruelty towards Nadine. Throughout the 3-week trial, Nadine's family faced the painful reality in the courtroom, while Kia chose to spend some days at home with her granddaughter. Daniel's lack of remorse, evident in his fake displays of affection towards his mother, disgusted Claire. Testimonies from the intensive care unit nurse painted a grim picture of Nadine's condition, further solidifying Daniel's guilt. Throughout it all, Daniel never offered an apology to Nadine's family, leaving Claire disillusioned by his insincerity. The chilling echoes of mutilated words reverberated mercilessly down the cold, shadowy corridors, each syllable plunging Claire's soul deeper into an abyss of agony. Dr. Linda's relentless discourse stretched over 2 grueling hours, meticulously detailing every gruesome injury inflicted upon Nadine. With each description, the weight of the brutality bore down heavily upon Claire's heart, a relentless assault on her senses. As Dr. Linda's voice pierced through the air, Daniel remained eerily composed, his demeanor untouched by the harrowing accounts laid bare before him. It was as though the suffering of Nadine and her shattered family were mere trifles to him, inconsequential in the face of his own self-absorption. Refusing to acknowledge his guilt, Daniel's defiance only served to amplify Claire's anguish. His steadfast denial, devoid of remorse or empathy, cast him further into the depths of his own depravity. Despite the damning verdict that condemned him to a lifetime behind bars, Daniel's indifference persisted, a stark reminder of the darkness that dwelled within him. But even as the gavel fell and justice was seemingly served, the wounds of Nadine's family festered, raw and unhealed. The leniency of Irish law, offering a mere 18 years for a life extinguished, felt like a cruel mockery, a mockery that Claire and Nadine's loved ones could not accept. In the unforgiving confines of Whitfield Prison, Daniel found himself marked for retribution, a target among predators hungry for vengeance. Isolated from his fellow inmates for his own safety, he remained defiant, his arrogance unyielding even in the face of imminent danger. Yet, fate's relentless hand struck again within the walls of Midlands Prison, where Daniel became the victim of another inmate's brutal assault. Hospitalized and scarred, he bore the physical remnants of his own malevolence, a grotesque reminder of the pain he had inflicted upon Nadine and those who loved her. Nadine's story, a tragic testament to the horrors of domestic violence, reverberated far beyond the shores of Ireland. Born in Arlo, a beacon of hope on the southeastern coast, her light was extinguished far too soon, leaving behind a legacy of sorrow and a family torn asunder by grief. In the summer of 2012, 3 sisters, Phoebe, Tanith, and Kayla, embarked on a journey of adventure. Among them was Nadine, a captivating 26-year-old woman with plans to explore the wonders of Australia. With a heart brimming with anticipation, Nadine looked forward to a vacation filled with thrilling escapades, sports, and the prospect of forging new friendships. Nadine's essence radiated a unique charm that captivated those around her. Her laughter and radiant smile had a way of enchanting everyone she encountered. Despite her outgoing nature, Nadine harbored a sensitive soul, always seeing the goodness in people. She treasured her family deeply, finding solace and support in their love. Photography became Nadine's passion as she sought to capture fleeting moments of beauty in the world. What began as a hobby soon blossomed into a successful career where Nadine used her talents to enhance the beauty of others. In matters of the heart, Nadine treaded cautiously, cherishing her independence and relishing the company of friends. However, fate intervened when she crossed paths with Daniel, a reserved yet intriguing man from Dublin. Despite their stark differences in demeanor, Nadine found herself drawn to Daniel's piercing gaze and quiet strength. Their connection deepened as they explored the exotic landscapes of Australia together, sharing intimate moments and dreams beneath the sun-kissed skies. Watching Daniel conquer the waves while surfing, Nadine saw admiration and affection reflected in his eyes. Despite the geographical distance and the mysteries surrounding Daniel's life in Dublin, their bond grew stronger with each passing day. Nadine and Daniel's time together in Australia was a symphony of enchantment, promising a love that transcended boundaries. Their connection blossomed swiftly, although Nadine regarded it as a playful flirtation with no strings attached. Phoebe, Nadine's younger sister, was the first to be informed, followed by their mother, Claire, who quickly discerned the casual nature of the relationship. In June of 2013, Nadine returned home bearing unexpected news. She was pregnant with Daniel's child. Despite their attempts to forge a proper family, their relationship floundered, and Nadine found herself navigating the journey of motherhood alone when she gave birth to their daughter, Kia, in November of the same year. Phoebe stood steadfastly by her side, offering support and becoming a guiding presence in those early, challenging days of motherhood. Nadine's pregnancy marked a profound turning point in her life. Despite the dissolution of her relationship with Daniel, she embraced her role as a mother and found new purpose. Phoebe's unwavering support was instrumental during this period of transition. Nadine's story, though tinged with tragedy, is a testament to the power of love and familial bonds. Disappointed by her relationship with Daniel, Nadine longed for a stable and loving environment for her daughter. However, Daniel showed no signs of maturing into a responsible father figure. While Nadine tirelessly worked to provide for Kia, Daniel remained stagnant, refusing to take on the responsibilities of parenthood. In 2016, desperate to create a sense of family for Kia, Nadine made a final attempt by renting a house where they could all live together. However, Daniel's failure to follow through shattered Nadine's hopes for reconciliation. It was a pivotal moment for Nadine, as she came to terms with the reality of Daniel's absence and the broken promises that had plagued their relationship. Despite the pain and disappointment, Nadine emerged stronger, guided by the love for her daughter and the unwavering support of her sister. In the end, Nadine's journey was not defined by the failures of her relationship with Daniel, but by her resilience and determination to create a better life for herself and her daughter. Although Nadine and Daniel had separated, she did not lose hope that Kia would be able to keep in touch with her father. Unlike Nadine, Claire knew that Daniel wouldn't change. His only passion was boxing, and his family and daughter were not important to him. Despite all the difficulties, Nadine stayed strong. She continued to take care of Kia, giving her the love and support that she herself had not received from her father. Even though her daughter grew up without a father, she had an example of a strong and ambitious mother who taught her to never give up. Claire suggested that Nadine go to Rome to celebrate her birthday. The trip took place in October 2019. Arriving in Rome, going out on the terrace and enjoying the air filled with the smell of coffee and fresh pastries, Nadine confessed to her mother that she was going through a difficult period in her life. Her relationship with Daniel did not lead to anything good. Nadine did not need him and was good at being a mother. She liked her job, her home, and was proud of her achievements. Soon, Nadine was offered a job as a model. At that moment, she saw her future as promising and happy. Back in Ireland, Nadine was disappointed to learn that Daniel continued to make empty promises to visit Kia. One day, when Daniel was supposed to give Nadine money for their daughter, he asked for a meeting. Nadine immediately suspected that it was just an excuse to meet her and not Kia, but she could not refuse. At the same time, Nadine did not want to ruin Daniel's image in Kia's eyes. She still had hope to create a real family, although it seemed more and more impossible every day. Coming up with new excuses for the absence of her father, Nadine tried to protect her baby from disappointment and pain. She didn't want her daughter to suffer from Daniel's irresponsibility and ignorance. Despite this, Daniel did not want to break up with Nadine and let her go. He was afraid that she might start dating other men. Because of this, Nadine was forced to hide her personal life from him in order to avoid his constant control and threats. By the end of 2019, Nadine's life began to change. She left behind her relationship with Daniel. Despite this, Nadine looked forward to the future with hope and started dating a guy from Turkey. However, her attempts to keep this relationship a secret from Daniel were in vain. He found out about her new partner and was angry and furious. Unable to come to terms with the loss of control over Nadine, Daniel began to stalk her, turning her life into a nightmare. On December 5th, tired of the constant threats and insults, Nadine texted Daniel. She made it clear to him that their relationship was over and demanded that the harassment stop. Nadine firmly believed that this would put an end to this exhausting and tiring relationship. On December 13th, Nadine asked Daniel to babysit Kia as she was going to celebrate her aunt's birthday at a local pub. They agreed that Daniel would stay with Kia at Nadine's house while she spent time with her family. Daniel and Nadine lived in different cities. Daniel lived in London, and Nadine lived in Wicklow. On the night of December 14th, Daniel called Nadine several times at 11:57 p.m. and at 1:26 a.m., but there was no answer. Eventually, he sent her a message asking her to come back. Soon after Nadine returned home, she quickly changed her clothes, but what happened next remains unclear. However, we know that Daniel attacked Nadine and scared her 6-year-old daughter, Kia. One of the neighbors, Ayla Klenovich, heard the noise and screams, went to the house, and saw the open door to Nadine's apartment with the light on. She decided to check what was going on there. At the doorstep, Camila was met with a harrowing sight. Nadine lay sprawled on the floor of the hallway, with Daniel looming over her, his face twisted in a mixture of rage and panic. Overwhelmed with horror, Camila rushed back to her apartment, her trembling hands immediately dialing Nadine's family to relay the dreadful truth. As Claire listened to the tale, her demeanor turned icy, a whirlwind of unsettling thoughts racing through her mind, a foreboding sense settling in. Meanwhile, Daniel, consumed by his fury, fled the scene in his Volvo, leaving behind a haze of dust and the lingering stench of blood. Upon bursting into Nadine's apartment, a grisly scene unfolded before Claire's eyes. The walls of the hallway splattered with blood like strokes of an artist's brush, shattered glass and mirrors reflecting the gruesome reality of what transpired. Yet, this was only the beginning. At 9:50 a.m., Claire, Phoebe, and Kyle entered the kitchen, only to be met with a gut-wrenching sight. Nadine's lifeless body lay before them, torn and devoid of life. Simultaneously, some 20 miles away in the town of La, Daniel's recklessness met its end as his car careened into a ditch. Emerging from the wreckage, Daniel appeared dazed, his eyes vacant, his trembling form coated in blood. Confessing to a bewildered witness, he spoke in a voice laden with despair, admitting to the heinous act, his words echoing like a plea for absolution. As Daniel was whisked away to the hospital in an ambulance, his murmurs of love for Nadine hung in the air, as if he sought forgiveness in his darkest hour. Meanwhile, chaos reigned in Nadine's apartment. Stepping through the threshold, paramedics and police officers were met with the thick scent of blood. The scene before them, a testament to the brutality that unfolded within. Among them, paramedic Ian Clark was struck by the extent of the devastation. Broken dishes, shattered glass, and bloody footprints painted a grim portrait of a violent crime. Phoebe and Kyle, filled with grief and confusion, she lay unconscious, her body unrecognizable. An ambulance rushed Nadine to St. Vincent's Hospital, where she was admitted to the intensive care unit at 10:58 a.m. Doctors noted severe injuries to Nadine's head, neck, and chest, expressing concern over her condition, especially upon discovering 64 additional injuries of unknown origin on her body. Despite multiple blood transfusions, Nadine's critical condition remained stable. Claire, refusing to lose hope, stood vigilantly by Nadine's side, holding on to the belief that her daughter would return home. She surrounded Nadine with familiar belongings, including photographs, perfumes, and toys, hoping to provide comfort and support during this ordeal. Though unsure of what lay ahead, Claire was determined to weather the storm alongside her daughter, convinced that love and care would see them through. On December 16th, as Nadine fought for her life, Daniel faced a court appearance, ultimately being remanded into custody pending further trial. Later that afternoon, Claire accompanied Nadine for a follow-up examination of her cerebral cortex, praying for her daughter's strength to persevere. Tragically, on December 17th, between 3 and 4 p.m., Nadine drew her final breath, never regaining consciousness. Her most severe injuries proved fatal. The Irish police colonel, Dean McCarthy, deemed this violent crime one of the most heinous he had encountered. Dr. Linda Mogan, the chief state pathologist, conducted Nadine's autopsy at the city funeral home on December 18th. Left alone with her thoughts, Claire grappled with unanswered questions, struggling to comprehend the reasons behind the tragedy. The following day, Daniel recounted the harrowing details of the event. In the narrative of the assault, he recounted how he struck her and utilized the charger cord to strangle her. Initially, he targeted Nadine, delivering blows to her head despite her attempts to resist. Daniel persisted, employing various violent methods, including stabbing and strangling Nadine with the cord. Throughout the ordeal, Kia, Nadine's daughter, cried out, pleading with her father to cease the violence and spare her mother's life, but her pleas went unanswered. Despite Nadine's desperate struggles, Daniel's strength prevailed, and he continued the assault until morning. A funeral service was held on December 22nd at St. Mary and Peter's Church in Arlo, Nadine's hometown. Over 1,000 mourners gathered to bid farewell to her, with the church overflowing and hundreds more watching via live broadcast. 6 individuals solemnly carried Nadine's casket, adorned with scarlet velvet roses, resembling Snow White, peacefully at rest. In the front row, Nadine's mother, Claire, struggled to contain her tears, her eyes filled with love and admiration for her daughter. Surrounding her were grieving relatives and friends, openly expressing their sorrow. David, Nadine's father, approached the altar, his voice trembling with emotion and tears streaming down his face as he placed one of Nadine's handbags beside her casket, a poignant reminder of her elegance and charm. A family friend, Kyle, held a trembling photo of Nadine and Kia, radiating happiness and affection. Meanwhile, Kia, still grappling with confusion and grief, clung to her mother's coffin, unaware of the full extent of the tragedy. Phoebe, Nadine's sister, fought back tears as she brought her pair of shoes to the altar, the same ones Nadine had planned to wear to the prom. Tanith, another close friend, approached with delicate care, placing a photo album brimming with cherished memories on the polished wooden table. Each page held snapshots, capturing the essence of Nadine's vibrant spirit and radiant smile, images destined to eternally reside within the depths of their hearts. Priest Michael Moore, a beacon of sincere empathy, took his place at the altar, his countenance a reflection of the collective sorrow filling the chapel. With gentle yet firm words, he commenced the ceremony, his voice weaving a tapestry of eternal life and hopeful promises. To the grieving assembly, his words were like a soothing melody, offering solace to wounded hearts. In a moment of profound tenderness, Priest Michael turned his attention to little Kia, a beacon of innocence amidst the sea of mourning. With a paternal warmth, he expressed gratitude for the joy she had brought Nadine, and tenderly voiced hope for her future, promising an abundance of care and love. He pledged that they, the gathered mourners, would stand as Kia's guardian angels, a shield against life's harshness. Phoebe and Tanith, their voices choked with emotion, stepped forward to speak the final words, their love and grief intertwining in a poignant tribute to their beloved sister. Tears flowed freely as they bid their farewells, their hearts heavy with the weight of loss. As the strains of funeral music filled the air, marking the close of the ceremony, Nadine's coffin was gently lowered into the earth, finding its final resting place in the hallowed grounds of San Gabriel Cemetery. Loved ones gathered to bid their last goodbyes, their whispered prayers, a solemn tribute to a life lost too soon. In memory of Nadine's spirit and to provide support for Kia, who now faced a future without parental guidance, the Nadine Lot Charity Fund was established. A testament to the enduring legacy of love and compassion, it would serve as a beacon of hope for those in need, ensuring that Nadine's light would continue to shine brightly in the lives of others.